housing side of it, that might be what we get, but we just don't know.
Ed, thank you very much. Got to save it for the kids. Bloomberg text Ed Ludlow, and you should, of course, watch his show at 11 a.m. Eastern. Now, investors this morning also waiting the Fed decision on Wednesday. President Trump pushing the central bank to go big this week.
The Fed chairman's incompetent. I think you have a big cut because I don't think he can help with cutting. It's perfect for cutting.
Michael McKee, Bloomberg Chief Economics and Policy Correspondent, joins us now. Mike, Trump expecting a big cut. What are markets expecting?
Yeah, markets are not expecting a big cut. The president is likely to be disappointed. However, he is likely to get a cut. It is going to be a very busy week. Today we had Empire Manufacturing post a big loss, suggesting the economy is slowing down significantly, and that could mean more evidence for the Fed to cut rates, but they're already on track. Tuesday, retail sales and import prices will give us an idea of whether consumers are hanging in there and whether foreign exporters are cutting their prices to absorb some of the tariffs. Wednesday is the big meeting, of course, and Thursday, jobless claims in Philly Fed. They could be influential, but the Fed will have already met, so probably not going to matter quite as much. Before we get to Wednesday, though, we've got a lot going on. The appeals court may decide today on whether Lisa Cook can be part of the Fed when the meeting starts tomorrow. The administration has asked for a decision by today. They don't have to, but we could get a decision tonight. And of course, also tonight, the Senate likely to confirm Stephen Myron to the Fed. The Fed meeting begins at 9 a.m. on Tuesday. The decision at 2 p.m. Will there be a cut? Will there be dissents? Plus economic forecasts and the dot plot. Gotta stay tuned for that.
I know the Fed is looking closely at the jobs data, and that's why they'll cut. But inflation is still relatively high, right? It's still 50% above their 2% target. 2.9% is the headline number. 3.1% is the core CPI number. President Trump says, first of all, that inflation is gone and it's come down on groceries. But he says housing is the main sticking point. That's the big problem. And he thinks this cut is going to help somehow with housing. How does that work? How does that look to you?
It looks iffy. We're not sure what will happen with housing, but first of all, grocery prices are going back up again, which the president kind of left out of his statement. But with housing, it's the long end that matters because that influences mortgage rates, and the long end has not been, as you know, behaving the same way as the short end. The Fed is the influence for 2 years and shorter, and after that, you start to get into what investors think inflation expectations are going to be. So if inflation is still going up, then we may not see long end rates come down, which may mean you don't see mortgage rates come down. So it's hard to say exactly what's going to happen. It's not a one-for-one correlation.
Well, I know the last time the Fed cut, we had the 10-year actually rise. Mm-hmm. But if we got the long end down and mortgage rates were lower, house prices, I assume, would go higher.
Right, because all of a sudden the people who are locked in their mortgages that didn't want to move might start to move if you get enough cuts, and then there's more demand, and then prices are higher.
Yeah, it's...
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell, and we are live streaming on Rumble, on YouTube, and on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Please subscribe to all the channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. You can follow me on X and on GETTR. You can also help support the free content that I provide you almost on a daily basis by donating on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. You can also be a paid member to my Patreon channel or my Substack. It's a great way to help support the work. Again, I don't put stuff behind a paywall. I believe that if you're going to do news, you should make it for free. But if you'd like to support, please do. In addition, I have products on my store. I have ebooks and supplements and course material on immunology and pulmonology. Please take a look at those products to help support the work that I do. Some of the great products that I do have on the store are structural nano silver soaps. Very high quality soaps. These products that I sell on my store are the products that I use. And you can get it in lemongrass, in charcoal tea tree, lavender, and also in peppermint. Very high quality soaps. Get a few bars for your household. Help support the work that I do. Use discount 5, all caps, discount 5. You get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right. So what I'd like to do is cursory look over the news here. And let's just jump right into MSNBC. Investigators work to uncover the motive of Charlie Kirk's assassin. This is Morning Joe.
We have additional evidence, forensic evidence that has been processed. We'll be sharing that when charges are filed on Tuesday. So everything that we know confirms that that this is the person. The why behind this, again, we're all drawing lots of conclusions and how someone like this could be radicalized. And I think that those are important questions for us to ask and important questions for us to answer.
That is the governor of Utah saying the public will learn a lot more tomorrow when formal criminal charges are filed against the man accused of murdering conservative activist Charlie Kirk. We'll be bringing you the latest on the investigation this morning. We're also paying close attention to Washington, D.C., where President Trump's 30-day takeover of the district's police force has come to an end, but may not be over. We'll explain that. Also, a big development in the New York City mayor's race, with the state's governor throwing her support behind Zoran Mamdani. We'll tell you why Kathy Hochul decided to give him her endorsement. And we'll recap which shows got the most recognition at last night's Emmy Awards. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe. It is Monday, September 15th. And with us we have the co-host of our fourth hour, staff writer at The Atlantic, Jonathan Lemire, U.S. special correspondent for BBC News and the host of The Rest is Politics podcast, Katty Kay, columnist and associate editor for the Washington Post, David Ignatius, and senior writer for The Dispatch and a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion, David Drucker joins us this morning. A lot to get to this morning. We'll start with what we're learning about the alleged assassin in last week's murder of conservative political activist Charlie Kirk. 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, who was taken into custody on Friday following a 33-hour manhunt, is being held without bail at Utah County Jail. He was booked on suspicion of aggravated murder, felony discharge of a firearm, and obstruction of justice. Utah prosecutors say they will file formal charges tomorrow when the alleged shooter is set to have his first appearance in court. At this hour, key questions remain about the suspect's motive for the fatal shooting. Investigators are sorting through all the evidence, including the bullet casings engraved with messages about fascism, video games, and internet memes. Utah Governor Spencer Cox told NBC News yesterday the suspect is not cooperating with authorities, but his roommate, who Cox said was shocked by the shooting, has been helping investigators. The governor added that the suspect was in a romantic relationship with his roommate, who is transgender. A federal official tells NBC News there is not a solid understanding of whether there is any connection between that relationship and the shooting. The governor went on to say the suspect had a leftist ideology, although he was not registered to any political party. Cox also described him as a once very normal, very smart young man who appeared to have been radicalized in recent years.
Friends that have confirmed that there was kind of that deep, dark internet, the Reddit culture, and these other dark places of the internet where this person was going deep. I believe that social media has played a direct role in every single assassination and assassination attempt that we have seen over the last 5-6 years. There is no question in my mind that cancer probably isn't a strong enough word. What we have done, especially to our kids, it took us a decade to realize how evil these algorithms are.
So President Trump So President Trump announced that he will travel to Arizona in the coming days to attend a memorial service for Kirk. That comes as the president says he hopes the nation will heal following the fatal shooting. But he also blamed what he called a radical left group of lunatics for standing in the way. In an interview with NBC News, the president added, this group, quote, doesn't play fair, and they never did. He also singled out Democratic mega donor George Soros, saying he, quote, should be put in jail. Trump has suggested the donor may have violated RICO laws, but Soros' team says the accusations are false and outrageous. Conservative columnist David French has a new piece for the New York Times entitled, There Are Monsters in Your Midst Too. And David writes in part, quote, if we're convinced that political violence comes from only one side of the divide, then the temptation toward punitive authoritarianism is overwhelming. They are evil and violent, and they must be crushed. If, however, we accurately understand that America has an immense problem with violent extremism on both sides of the ideological aisle, even if at any given moment one side is worse than the other, then the answer lies in reconciliation, not domination. In fact, it's the will to dominate that magnifies the crisis and radicalizes our opponents. Violent acts aren't uniting our nation in introspection, grief and grace. They're separating us into warring factions. To get past this dreadful moment, more and more Americans are going to have to face a painful fact. Evil isn't confined to one side of the American divide. There are monsters in your midst, too.
And David Ignatius, this has been the case for some time. We've had a swing back and forth, and we're going to be going through the history of political violence from the 60s forward. But obviously, we all saw during the 2024 campaign the assassination attempts at President Trump. We all saw in horror the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We all saw in horror the assassination in her home of, along with her husband, the Democratic leader of the Minnesota House of Representatives. We also saw during that killing spree the attempted assassination of a Democratic Senate Majority Leader while sleeping in his home along with his wife. We also certainly saw the attempt to burn down Josh Shapiro's home in Pennsylvania, and later the man admitting that he wanted to take a hammer to his head, just like Paul Pelosi had a hammer taken to his head. In the case of the Minnesota slaughter, you had a man arrested that had a hit list of 42 Democrats, a kill list. And we can go back and forth, and we can go back and forth. I don't think it's particularly helpful, though, when you have one side pointing at the other side and saying, oh, this shows just how extreme one side is, when many of these same people completely ignore Democratic leaders who were assassinated in their bed and actually mock and ridicule Paul Pelosi for being brutalized, too. I think most normal people that I talk to, they're deeply discouraged that this is happening on either side, and nobody's trying to gain points. As David French said, there are monsters on both sides, and I really don't, I must say, I actually am so shocked at the killing, but so disappointed by some of the reactions I've seen from the killing on both sides.
So, Joe, it's a terrible long list that you just cited of all of the acts of violence against people on both sides. It's too long. And it's a reminder that, as our colleague David French wrote so powerfully, that there is evil among us. We know that from our Bible teachings, and we see it today, every day on the TV screen. We've had two powerful responses for the nation since the killing of Charlie Kirk. One is that of the governor of Utah, Spencer Cox, who has emerged. I didn't know much about Spencer Cox, but I sure do now. And his ability to say to people, we have to find an exit ramp, to use his phrase. We're on a death trip. I think he was profoundly right when he said almost every one of these mass killings has some connection with social media. Something that infected the killer from the right or the left, whatever it was. And calling in a powerful way for unity and understanding. And then we did have from the president, a specific attack on the radical left lunatics who are horrible and horrendous, and that's the source of this problem. Peter Baker, the New York Times, brilliant New York Times reporter, wrote last night that President Trump is trying to be the president of a red state America only. We need a unifier who will speak to the whole country, whatever you feel, in the way that Governor Spencer Cox did. So, as your list, Joe, tells us, we're in a dark place, and there's an exit ramp that Governor Cox tried to describe for us. So we all need to look for it. We find it, head for it, with all the power and passion we can.
The problem is, in the last several years, we have seen the liberal side, the ultra-liberal side, become more violent and less democratic and less constitutional. And I keep on saying, take a look at just the Supreme Court justices when they go through their nomination process and their confirmation process with the Senate. When a Republican House executive branch is in control, the Democratic Party has a tendency to be extremely violent and create lies and disruption during the confirmation process. You don't see that with the Republicans. So right there is just one glimpse of the issue with the ultra-liberal. They're Marxist. They believe in collectivism, not individualism. They don't believe in capitalism. They want to have a one-party system and have complete control. Do you think that the ultra-liberal really believes in maintaining the Bill of Rights? Then you're not paying attention. So what has happened is that it keeps on boiling over. There's continuing violence and disruption, social disruption. And then all of a sudden, the conservative is now pushing back. And as the conservative is pushing back, and the conservative is much more muscular in the pushback, and has been silent for so long that now you're seeing liberal media starting to go, whoa, wait a minute, this is getting a little scary. Because they thought that the silent majority, the silent conservative, was going to stay silent. But that's no longer the case. So it's not about, well, one side de-escalate and another side de-escalate. No, that's not how we get off the off-ramp. We need to come to the realization that there is a section of society that is anti-constitution, anti-capitalist, pro-communist. And if we don't root that out, we are going to have a problem. And the sad thing is that many institutions of higher learning have been infected by this pro-communist, socialistic mindset in the faculty, with the student body. And they think, these people literally think that Marxism is okay. And so now the conservatives are pushing back. And the moment you inject a little bit of spirituality, a little bit of God-fearing in the public square, that must be hate speech, according to the crazy liberal. If ultra-liberals' policies were positive for the country, why is it that the Gen Z are looking so bad physically? Why do they look like they have such mental anguish and endocrine disruption? There's something physiologically wrong with these people. Just look at them. They're just the phenotype of a liberal. There's something wrong. Independent on if you know anything about Marxism, independent if you know anything about their agenda, just looking at them, you can see that there's a lot of hate and it affects the body. Then it affects the mindset. But Marxism, collectivism, anti-capitalism is the tools that they're using to erode our constitutional freedoms. So when a conservative is pushing back, a pro-constitutionalist is pushing back in the public square with rhetoric, and the liberal doesn't like it, all of a sudden it becomes a problem. Now that doesn't mean that the ultra-right isn't an issue, because it is. It is an issue. But if you look at this honestly, the ultra-left policies is an existential threat to our constitutional freedoms. Now, what do people do? The first step is to have more speech against, the markets are opened, more speech against the ultra-liberal, showing that Marxism is bad, that communism is bad, that socialism is bad, that free markets work, but unfettered free markets can cause problems. So there has to be proper regulation. Laissez-faire capitalism isn't the best, but capitalism versus communism, that's a no-brainer. But yet the liberal policies are pushing in mayors like Mondani and Mayor Wu in Boston. These people are democratic socialists. No, they're communists. They're communists. Just branded as a democrat socialist. Get real. So this is a battle of the Constitution. And it's amazing to me on how educated some of or uneducated, depending on how you want to look at it, but when they go to university and they get brainwashed with this Marxism crap. But if you look at a conservative, do their kids look like they're screwed up? When you look at a conservative, does it look like they have a better home life? Now compare it to an ultra-liberal. I mean, just look at it. A classic example. Look at Trump. Even though Trump isn't perfect, there's a lot of parts of his personality I don't like, but he's an effective president. But if you look at his family and compare it to Harris's family, or even Obama's family, just look at that. There's something wrong with the ideology and the way they're raising their kids. Would you want your kid to be growing up like Harris's kid, whatever her name is? Or the Obama kids? Really? Is that what you really want? So people need to be honest. The ultra-left is anti-constitutional. They want to erode your constitutional freedoms. Well, Dr. Paul Cottrell, that's not true. Yes, it is. They want to take away your Second Amendment and curtail your First Amendment. That's just the start. They want to control your kids in school and indoctrinate them in these liberal policies and take away parenting. They want to have these drag queens reading story time in kindergarten. That's totally unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. How can someone that ended up getting an education degree to teach and to be licensed allow for that to happen? And you think that our society is going to be better off? You think our society is better off because of Pride Month? Of course not. Absolutely, positively not. Because what they're trying to do is desensitize the society and then start to sexualize kids. And then what will happen is that they create this gender dysphoria. And then you have the medical community that's allowing it because it's money. Just keep on writing those prescriptions on endocrine disruptors to stop certain hormonal balances for development. Or what about those surgeries? Reassignment surgeries, big bucks. It's a big problem. And if conservatives don't push back, we're going to lose our country.
Ready and investors kind of positioned for that. So to me, that kind of risk reward is potentially on the lower side, given that we're already positioned for kind of good earnings, and can they repeat them? I don't know. I'm not sure the economy is kind of slowing down.
Well, good earnings we've gotten, and it comes out of a period for all of corporate America, Maria, that there was a real question as to whether we would get that. Trump this morning putting on Truth Social suggesting that he's going to be pushing the SEC to get rid of quarterly reports, instead have it just every 6 months, so twice a year. As an investor, Maria, that looks through earnings reports, do you think that it would make sense for the U.S. to follow in the footsteps of, I guess, Europe and the U.K. that does not mandate quarterly reporting?
No, I think it's a bad idea. I think we need quarterly reporting.
I mean,
I think it's important to have. I think it's extremely important to have quarterly reporting, especially for an IPO. It just launched. You don't know if they played funny games to get to the IPO, because many IPOs fail. And not only that, you're trying to rebalance your portfolio every month or every quarter. And if you don't have the data points, those more finer data points, then you have to wait every 6 months. No. We need quarterly reports. I'd go even further. I think that should be a system in place where it should be released almost in real time or monthly for these reports. So don't play games. You can catch them. This is a bad idea. See, I'm not 100%. I'm not a brainwashed Trump supporter. I'll say it if I think that Trump's policies are bad. This is a bad policy. We should have quarterly reports, if not monthly reports. Not less. We may need more. I also believe that Trump didn't go far enough with Iran. He had a perfect opportunity to decapitate the Ayatollah, and he was afraid. Trump is a taco. It's the taco trade. He says something and then backs off. But I still support him because he's a capitalist. He's not a fucking Marxist.
So like with a lower ability to kind of talk to bankers, talk to market, update on the story. I think that's important. That also insurance kind of more gradual price moves as opposed to kind of all of a sudden we learn something about companies that we had no idea, no transparency, and so some corporate governance issues. So I think as an investor, as an analyst, it's better to have more information than less in general.
Maria, thank you so much. Thank you for bringing us all of your information, Maria Whiteman of State Street. Matt, I think comparing things to China is always an interesting choice, but Maria pointed out even in countries where you don't have the urge or the necessity to report quarterly, still give trading updates. Like that is still a cost. If you're trying to save money, I don't know if this necessarily does it.
All right, it'll be interesting. That'll be an interesting question to put to CEOs, right?
For sure.
That we talk to, and we talk to them every day here at 10:30. We'll ask the CEO of Exact Sciences today how he would embrace that. I'm just marveling at Deutsche Bank still, and how well, because I lived in Germany for so long and reported on this company. I talked to James von Moltke, the CFO, every quarter. At one point in 2020, their price to book was below 0.2. So they're trading for less than 0.2 of their book value. Even in 2022, it was only a quarter. So to see them get back to this level, price to book ratio, they're worth almost as much as the book value of their assets now. It's pretty impressive.
That is very impressive. But let's talk about more American companies.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to go to CNBC. They're talking to the CBO director. But before I do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support the work that I do. You may like the show. Maybe, you find something that you learn, or you get some good insight about my perspective on the markets or the news. But please help support the work. I do this stuff for free. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and help support the work and help support your health. And if you follow this protocol, you are going to slow down the aging process. This is what I do every day. I'm in my 50s. This stuff works. If you just follow my lead, you'll be okay, especially with the fall and the winter that's coming, because you know what's coming. All you got to do is listen to the news and pay attention. Something's going to happen in the United States in the fall and the winter, and you better be prepared. Please go to my store and get the Max 35 or the Cleanse. Max 35 is 35 parts per million, and Cleanse is 30 parts per million. They're at different price points, but take a teaspoon a day, every day, swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20, 30 seconds, and then swallow it. What this will do is improve your oral cavity, the health of your oral pharynx, help the health of your epithelial lining, and maintain that mucosal barrier. Super important to boost up that immune system. If you're not feeling well, or someone around you is not feeling well, at home or at work, make sure you take a tablespoon or two a day and continue that until it's all clear. And then go back to your maintenance dose. I've been doing this for over 5 years every day. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Be prepared, because once you get something, you're going to have a problem. And I also have, before we go to CNBC, I have these very high quality toothpaste. They're structural nano-silver toothpaste, has no fluoride. Use it every day. They'll whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, help with the health of your gum line, reduce inflammation at the gum line, and with good oral hygiene, you are actually helping your vascular system and your valvular system. Very important to take. And oh, by the way, it's going to help you in the fall and the winter. Be prepared. Get a few tubes of this toothpaste. Be prepared, because the winter and the fall will be problematic across the country.
Put America's strength to work in your portfolio with BAM-insured municipal bonds. Protect your investments with an added layer of security and guaranteed income. Invest with strength for a stronger tomorrow with BAM Mutual.
The Congressional Budget Office is projecting higher inflation and unemployment this year, with slowing economic growth ahead. Joining us right now to discuss it is CBO Director Phil Swagel. And Phil, thanks for coming in today.
Yeah, Becky, thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
So the new numbers, the new estimates take into account several things. One is population growth because of immigration. You're anticipating that it's going to be significantly lower. The other is the one big beautiful bill, what the costs are associated with that, and I guess the costs are higher. And that's the two impacts that we have on these numbers.
No, that's right. And we have the bill, the reconciliation bill, is boosting the economy, and immigration is slowing it down. And then the effects of the tariff are both raising inflation and slowing down the economy, both businesses and households facing the drag from the tariffs.
I mean, I think about trying to compute all of these numbers with the many, many moving pieces that you have. It's a pretty complex situation. And I would imagine it changes on a pretty daily basis. But let's focus on population growth first. because that probably plays into the jobs numbers that we've been getting, and that's kind of front and center for what the Fed is going to be deciding this week. What do you see with those population numbers?
No, that's right. And the challenge for the Fed is that we have both labor demand going down as the economy is weakening, but labor supply is falling dramatically. And we have our population numbers that you mentioned look to be several 100,000 fewer each year over the next 10 years, and something like 1 million fewer this year alone. And that's when the change, both in the law that was passed on July 4th, provides more money for enforcement and the wall and things like that. But since January 20th, the administration has put in a series of administrative measures that have really stopped people from coming in across the border in the way that they were the previous 4 years. And
so they're trying to tell you that illegals need to be here so we can maintain a modern version of slavery. But we also have a problem with our population growth or lack of. You know why? Because you have a liberal policy out there brought to you by elite institutions to demonize God, country, and family. So when you have the demonization of family and you don't have family creation, don't be surprised in one generation you actually have a huge economic decline. Just look at what's happening in Japan, where it's aging. Japan is like the land of Yoda now. Everyone is getting older, and there's no kids. Thriving societies have children. Thriving societies have the idea of taking care of family and having a decent morality, not stealing, not killing, some of the basics. But when you have a society that is antithetical to those ideals, don't be surprised that it'll start to devolve. So here's another example where you think about the crazy liberal wanted illegal immigration to have the borders porous and let it just flow in. But how's that any different than just slavery in Moderna? How? They promoted slavery. Oh, the Democratic Party coming from the South. See, everything comes in full circle. The Democratic Party is the party of slavery. Wake up.
Issues around that, but for the economy, it means fewer people and fewer workers.
Does that suggest that the jobs market is healthier than we may anticipate, given some of these reads? Because the unemployment rate's still 4.3%.
Yeah, that's the challenge, is that both labor supply and labor demand are falling. So the break even for the monthly jobs number has got to be much lower. It's got to be much lower. Right. But still, we see lots of signs that the economy is weakening, and that that obviously the Fed is seeing that.
We have problems with our economy. We have problems with Social Security. Who's going to be taking care of the elderly? Oh, well, let's think about this. From 1970s to now, more than 65 million fetuses were killed. 65 million. But that's brought to you by crazy liberals. My body, my choice. That led to no population growth.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to square that up with what we just heard from Ed Yardeni. He looks at it and says, yeah, maybe we'll get a 25 basis point cut, but he thinks that we're basically at neutral levels now. He's a pretty straight down the middle guy who just looks at markets and by the way, thinks the markets are going to continue to grow for the next several years pretty effectively.
No, I mean, Ed is really interesting because he sees the complexity in this, and that's one of the challenges for us. And you talked about how the economy is changing minute by minute, and policies are changing. We see the tariffs changing day by day. There's a lot of uncertainty in the economy.
Yeah, how do you even put the tariffs into this? What are your assumptions?
So we we essentially follow what the administration is doing really day by day. And we have a team at CBO that does the modeling of this. Whatever they do, we look at it, we wait until the dollars hit the Treasury statement, and then we assume that those policies will continue on forever.
What happens if a judge rules that these tariffs, or at least many of them, are illegal?
The Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court, right? This is now in front of the Supreme Court. It's one of the key uncertainties in the economy. That is.
Have you run the
What would you do? You don't count them anyway, right?
No, we do. So we.
But you don't count it in terms of
See, people aren't paying attention.
People
are not paying attention to the nuance here. You have a court that's captured. And they are pushing that you have people within the court system that are captured, pushing that tariffs are illegal. But yet, we used to do them before we started issuing tons of debt and issuing tons of taxes for income. We used to do this in the United States all the time before globalization. Oh, the globalists come in, they create these world trade agreements, and then all of a sudden you're captured as a sovereign nation, so you can't issue taxes. Now, who do you think is protected? Do you think it's the citizen that's protected, or do you think it's the transnational capitalist that's protected? The global corporation. It sure as hell ain't the citizen. So what is the court system? If they strike this down, what is the court system basically saying? You either issue more debt or you tax your citizens. You can't tax the corporation with tariffs. Do you just see what they just did?
We have the tariffs that the president has put in place since January 20th. We have those reducing the deficit by $4 trillion over the next 10 years. Wow. So it's $3.3 trillion of revenue and then $700 billion of averted debt costs. So that would be a big reversal.
Now think about this. If you're buying goods and services and you spend, let's say, I don't know, $10,000, $20,000 a year in goods, all right? Whatever it is, whatever the number is. But you get the point here. There's certain goods that you don't have to buy. You may find a substitute or just don't buy it at all. Because most people that buy in the United States buy too much of whatever. But if there's a tariff on the good, it's your decision to buy it or not. Your income is getting taxed. So either you don't work, or if you work to survive, you get taxed. So if you have a government that's bloated and needs to have funds flowing in for programs, socialistic programs brought to you by ultra-liberals, then you're going to have to be taxed more. People push back and go, I'm not going to vote for someone that's going to tax me. Then they have to issue more debt. But if you issue more debt, you're actually worse off in the long run. Why? Because you have to pay the principal and the interest payment on the debt instead of just paying the tariff. Now, who's better off? The citizen's better off with the tariff. The corporation's better off by just having the government issue more debt and tax the citizenry. Now, do you understand why there's the WTO? And then the bankers make a ton of money on the interest. So you should really sit back and think, perhaps tariffs are a better option than not. Because it's only those three. Well, there's a fourth, and that is radically reducing programs from the government. So you're spending less. Or a combination of them. But if you look at it in a purest form, which is better? Income tax, tariffs, or issuing debt? From the perspective of the citizen. By far, it's tariffs. It's way better.
the deficit. On the other hand, it'd be lower inflation and probably higher business investment, higher consumer spending.
So net, you still came up with that the tariffs were going to increase it. Oh no, it was the OBBB was going to increase the deficit by $4 trillion.
Yeah, that's right. It's by 3.4 trillion.
That's
Did you offset it with the tariff stuff?
No, we will. In our future budget updates, we will do that arithmetic, putting everything together in the same place. For the score of the bill, we only look within the four corners of the bill, and that's what the tariffs.
The bill you said would increase the deficit by 3.4 trillion from 2024 to 34, but then you say the debt service costs added up to 4.1.
The additional,
with the additional
exactly,
added up to 4.1.
Exactly.
That assumes that interest rates are at what level? Because that's a big factor in all of this too.
No, that's a key. So we have for that cost estimate of the bill, we were using our economic assumptions that were made on January 17th. And that's the budget rules, right? That's what Congress tells us to do. We will be looking at it again now and see what is it.
Well, the president wants it 300 basis points lower.
So,
yeah, I mean,
so he's saying all this. He's saying that there's an increase in the debt in the debt, but he's modeling at a higher interest rate.
35 basis points of cuts between now and the end of January. So we do expect that to happen. There's just kind of so much going on in the economy, it's hard to know where it will end up.
Do you make judgment calls?
Build a website you love with Wix. For your words, create your brand.
Do you make judgment calls as to whether tariffs are good and for the economy? Do you make judgment calls about one big beautiful bill? Like, how do you come down on it?
Yeah. So what I tell members of Congress is that they get our analysis and not our opinion. So I will tell them, here's what it does to the economy: tariffs, higher inflation, higher revenue, slower growth. Whether that's good or bad is up to the Congress, to the president, now to the Supreme Court. So we're looking at just the budget.
Now think about it. I don't believe that for a second. So to replace the tariffs, increase your taxes, or issue more debt, and that's going to grow the economy? Really? I mean, think about what he's saying. The implicitness of what he's saying. Tariffs are going to shrink the economy. It's going to slow it down. But we need to issue more debt. And then everything's going to be fine. Really? This is the problem that we have. Just the canary in the coal mine is just looking at France and Britain. You're probably going to see an IMF bailout for Britain within the next 12 months. It will be a miracle if that doesn't happen. And we're not that far away.
It's the right thing.
Have you run the numbers as to what would happen? Like, do you run different scenarios if the Supreme Court were to overturn those tariffs? Like
we haven't done that yet. It's implicit. We haven't said, well, if the Supreme Court does that, what would happen to the economy? I mean, it's implicit in the $4 trillion of revenue, $4 trillion of revenue plus net interest costs. That would reverse over the next 10 years.
So would inflation?
Inflation would be lower. I mean, this is a 3.3.
You literally haven't run these numbers, or you don't want to tell them because you don't.
No. We in our economic assumptions, we look at the law as it is now, and that's what Congress has told us to do. To say, tell us the baseline, assuming current law. Current law plus current policy has the tariffs. If those are reversed, we will certainly do that arithmetic, and it's good. Again, it's a mix, right? Because it's less revenue, higher deficit. But it's like a big tax cut on businesses and households.
Tariffs are important because it's a lever to push industry to come back to the United States so we build our economic cluster. One, that helps the American worker. Two, it helps to build a higher GDP. And three, it allows us to have the economic prowess to wage war against China. I think all three of those are super important. This guy is just so smart, he's stupid. So smart, but he's stupid.
In terms of the inflation numbers that have surprised so many people on Wall Street, Has it come as a surprise to you, or how often do you tweak those numbers?
We do. So we update our forecast just a couple times a year, generally 3 times a year. That's what we did just last Friday.
Yeah.
Inflation since January has come in a bit higher than we expected.
Oh, it has.
It has.
So it's higher than you expected.
It's higher than we expected.
Lower than what-
And that's right. It's lower than what Wall Street expected, but higher than what we expected. And it's probably the tariffs, right? The economy has been weakening over the course of the year. You'd expect that to lower inflation, but the tariffs have probably been pushing up inflation. Not by a lot, but by enough to show up.
Where else are your assumptions far different than Wall Street?
Now that's a good question. The biggest change would be that by law, we assume current law, right? So we don't assume future changes in fiscal policy, and Wall Street naturally does.
Right.
So at some point, there has to be either lower spending or higher taxes. And we don't assume that because Congress wants us to tell them what's the situation under current law.
Because no one wants to tell you what I just said. You stop the tariffs, you're going to have higher taxes. Or you have to take away your programs. Now, the best thing for America in the long run is to stay away from the totalitarian tiptoe or Marxism, running amok in the United States. The best thing that we can do is cut Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Now, if you're a veteran, you get your Medicare or Medicaid. If you are already on Social Security, you get it. If you're going to retire in the next 5 years, then you get less Social Security. And every 5-year tranche gets less and less and less, all the way to a point where you get to an age where they get nothing. It's called titration. You have to ease this into the society so they can have the time to save. And what's going to happen is that you're reducing the size of the government. You can reduce taxes, and the taxes that are coming in are to pay down the debt that has accumulated, not just the deficit. So you have a deficit that is no longer deficit, it's a surplus. And that surplus goes into actually paying down the $37 trillion debt that we have. We have a deficit of, I think, $2 trillion or whatever it is. 1.6, whatever it is. But this policy could get us into surplus to pay down the debt, and therefore eventually our interest payments become less and less and less, and we actually become much more productive. We switch from a consuming society to a saving society, a producing society. But the other side of the thing, so you have all these programs that are very socialistic. And some people benefit, some, but the society in general can't afford it anymore. So they have to be truncated and eliminated eventually. So that's taking away these social programs. But then so that's the conservatives saying we can't afford these programs, we need to get rid of them. But the conservatives have to take pain too. How? Uber wealthy individuals. And when I say uber wealthy, I'm talking individuals that are billionaires. You're taxed 75% of your income, and you cannot hide the money. You can't put it in a trust. You can't put it into a foundation. You can't put it into some sort of shell companies. And eventually that estate, 75%, is taxed, and it goes towards paying down the debt. Now, people would say, that's a lot of money, but it's not going to put a big dent in it. That's not the point. The point is that everyone has to take the pain. The average citizen's taking pain because they no longer have the social programs. And the uber wealthy are going to have to take the pain because they're using that money to capture Congress, to push for certain policies through the lobbying group. The only way you control that, the Achilles heel of that, is cut the money. Well, if you cut the money, The only way you're going to do that is go after the uber wealthy that's feeding the machine. So both sides of the spectrum feels as though they get something out of it. The liberals, let's say the left of the aisle, all right, they tax the uber wealthy. And it reduces their power, which is a good thing for the country. The conservatives get what they want because it's getting rid of social programs that we can't afford. That's the right policy. But when you have this identity politics, if you're a conservative and you hear that, oh, you're going to tax the uber wealthy, you're going to automatically knee-jerk and say that policy's bad. And if you're a liberal, you're going to say, oh, taking away Social Security for granny is bad, not realizing that everyone's going to have to take pain. The ones that are already on the program, they're locked in. But the ones that are coming in 5 years, too bad, you get less. The ones that are 4 years away, they still locked into the program. It's in 5-year tranches. But that's the way to do it. That's how you're going to save this country. But both sides, liberals and conservatives, are going to have to take the pain. Unfortunately, no one wants to take the pain to solve the problem. And if that doesn't happen, if they don't take the advice, if they don't do what I'm telling them, then you're going to end up like Britain, and you're going to have a debt crisis and a doom loop. And you literally will probably have civil war. All right. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the zeolite. This will detoxify your body so you don't think like a stupid liberal. Zeolite binds to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. It'll bind and it'll allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. Take this every day. Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue. Drink filtered water. Do that every day. If you want a heavier detox, take 10 small drops underneath your tongue. Drink the filtered water and do that daily until the bottle is done. Do that once or twice a year. But I recommend doing it daily. And also make sure that you filter your water, stay away from processed foods, and clean your environment at home and get rid of those chemicals that you don't need. If you have chemicals or cleaning solutions, put them in a double-layer container. All right, let's, I want to go to Fox News. I think it looks like they have, this is Kash Patel reveals something. Let's see.
He has not confessed to authorities. He is not cooperating. But all the people around him are cooperating. We can confirm that his roommate was indeed a boyfriend who is transitioning from male to female, and that he is cooperating with authorities.
A Fox News alert: Charlie Kirk
goes to university, ends up becoming radicalized. And oh, by the way, has this whole proclivity towards this ultra-liberal issue with gender and sexuality and all this stuff. See, there's a common theme with this. There's something going on with social media and the educational process where they are brainwashing these kids, and they become almost like I'm not saying he is, but it's almost like an MK Ultra kind of thing. You get these you get these signals from society through social media and just mainstream media, and also academia, and there's a brainwashing that takes place. And the society is devolving. It's devolving. And the only way to reverse this is this God, country, and family concept. And root this crap out.
Murder suspect refusing to cooperate as the FBI discovers new details about his dark digital footprint before he makes his first court appearance tomorrow.
All right, FBI Director Kash Patel joins us now. I can't imagine, Mr. Director, how busy you've been, especially Charlie Kirk isn't just a impactful person, he's your friend. So
I was a major supporter of Kash Patel getting in and being nominated, all right? But, I mean, are you really happy with his performance? Because when he's up on stage, he looks like he's lost, like he's an idiot. He's not an idiot. When you close your eyes and just listen to him speak, he's not an idiot. But he just looks incompetent when he's up on stage.
Oh, I understand that. But having said that, people are looking to you to find out is how big this investigation is going to be. Can you tell us the latest?
Absolutely. It's so good to be with you. And you're right. My personal feelings and relationship with Charlie, I have a job to do for the American people, and I'm committed to do it for President Trump. We flexed all resources the FBI had and searched multiple air assets as soon as this shooting occurred. We were cycling in agents, evidence response technicians.
Shouldn't he be doing that for anyone that was shot? No matter what political spectrum he's on? You know what's very interesting? I just finished a book called The Haves and Have-Yachts. It's a great, fascinating book about the uber wealthy and what they do. All right? And there's a chapter actually talking about how Greenwich, Connecticut, where all the hedge fund individuals are, there is a phrase called the Greenwich Republican. And the Greenwich Republican is purest sense pre-Trump days were fiscal conservatives with some level of liberal policy. What they call, they were formed basically with Prescott Bush. So Bush's father, was it Bush Sr.'s father or grandfather? I think it was his father. Now, but this Prescott Bush Republicanism, the term is called Greenwich Republican, all right? Trump comes in, and there were people within the Greenwich Republican world that wanted to move more towards being less liberal policy and more conservative, especially with American first policy. But there was a fracturing that was taking place between the Greenwich Republicans. All right, there was when Trump was running. One of the key donors of this kind of movement that was taking place helped fund Trump, but not just that, funded directly, not indirectly, directly to Charlie Kirk. So don't fall in this trap that Charlie Kirk built his organization all by scratch, because he didn't. He was highly connected to money in Greenwich, Connecticut. And, oh, by the way, so was Stephen Bannon.
Hostage rescue technicians and special operators in and out of Utah.
So let's take this. So one element is that Charlie Kirk didn't build his organization from scratch. He had a lot of serious money behind him. Two, in the sense of Patel saying, well, we pulled out all the stops and we're going after this guy. That's a nod to the Greenwich Republicans that are more conservative within this crowd, because the Greenwich Republicans are split. There's a little bit of a split there. Some of them are America First, I would call more conservative, and then you have some that are Prescott Bush type. And this was the reason why there was such fervor during the first presidential candidate primaries with Trump going after Jeb Bush. And there was this battle. It wasn't just Trump and Jeb Bush. It was actually a battle within the Greenwich Republican constituency. And it's not a lot of people, but it's a lot of money. So when you like sit back and go, well, wait a minute here. It's really not about these two people, Jeb and Trump. But there's a power struggle with them, with big money. And Charlie Cook was thrown right into it. Now I guarantee you, no one on the internet has said this.
And forth on these FBI planes as soon as we could so that there was no delay. And what we did, once I got there, along with the deputy on the ground, around 5 p.m. local on September 11th, was walk the entire crime scene, including the foots the suspect himself took. And what we learned was there was evidence, DNA evidence that could be collected and had been collected, including a screwdriver that was found on the rooftop. Also, we went over to the scene in the wooded area where the firearm was discarded, and the firearm had a towel wrapped around it. It's important. I'll get back to that later. I even walked into the wooded area in the ravine, so I knew from my investigative experience what I could bring to the table, what decisions I needed to make. And having the support of President Trump and the full support of the White House.
The major donor's last name is Hanley. It all came from Hanley.
For these resources to happen. And I can report today that the DNA hits from the towel that was wrapped around the firearm and the DNA on the screwdriver are positively processed for the suspect in custody.
So, Mr. Director, that is vital. That is breaking news and vital information, because now you have the casings for the gun. So you connect the gun. Now you got his DNA on it. That's huge. But I also want to get to another part.
I just got to interrupt. Sorry, I just got to interrupt. We have the DNA on the screwdriver that was found on the rooftop and the towel that the firearm was wrapped in. The firearm itself, this is a great point. Thanks for raising it.
Yeah, no problem.
That is being processed by ATF laboratories in Maryland. And I believe they'll speak to that at a later date when their process is incomplete. But I just want to let you know the FBI handled the screwdriver and the towel found on.
That is important clarification, Mr. Director. I want to get to the 20 members in that group chat.
The DNA on the screwdriver and the towel is a sideshow. It will prove that he did it. But there's a bigger thing going on here. There's a faction within the political establishment within Greenwich, Connecticut. Wake up.
Have they been brought in from questioning? And the group chat that from our reporting that we're hearing is from after the assassination. Do you have the messages from before the assassination?
Well, let me take a step.
They say it's what's on the inside that matters. You'd have to agree.
Well, let me take a step back and tell you what we were doing while we were there and how we were led to the suspect so that this all fits into the puzzle. We, as soon as we learned of the shooting, we were able to, I think Charlie Kirk was shot at 12:23 local time on September 10th. By 12:39 p.m. local time, FBI assets were on scene securing the scene. We then launched at 10 a.m. the next day the first images of the suspect. Myself and the deputy arrived at 5 p.m. local time on September 11th. And then what we did was decided to have a press conference at 8 p.m. local, where we issued for the first time FBI obtained video footage that we seized from the security camera surveillance system and new images, enhanced images. I decided to release immediately to the public because we were working with the public and the media to find this killer. Shortly after that 8 p.m. release, at 10 p.m. local time, the suspect was in custody. Why? because the father informed us, pursuant to an interview of him, that he looked at the video that we released that evening and the enhanced photos and identified the suspect. That's how fast the FBI was working to put out information in real time. And for comparative sake, the Boston bombing, the FBI didn't release images for 3 days. We know we didn't have 3 days. I made an executive decision on an investigative and operational need, and it turned out to be the right move because the men and women of the FBI said that's what we should be doing.
Yeah, we knew when that video was released, we said it here on Fox and Friends, someone's going to recognize this person because someone was friends with him, his family, someone knows this guy. Those images were crystal clear.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what you know about his background, his childhood, his father who had to turn him in.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ignore the last question. Going back to the group chats real quick, there's more than 20 individuals. But this is a great point. I want to lay out how this works. People think we can just get in these group chats and immediately find out who's in them. We, the FBI, are the investigatory body supporting multiple prosecutions and ongoing investigations. And that's another point. Our investigation at the FBI is ongoing. And there are scores of people in this Discord chat room. But we have to effectuate legal process. We have to go out there with search warrants so that if prosecutors want to later use this evidence, it's not tainted by being illegally obtained. We, the FBI, are running the investigation pointedly on the Discord chat group. There are scores of individuals that are going to be spoken to. There are also lots of family members and friends that have already been spoken to. And one more point on forensics. We were able to obtain in record time the text message chain between the suspect and his living partner, as well as other critical cellular information from our CAS team that analyzes cell phone data towers in the area to pinpoint the locations of the suspect and other individuals he was speaking with. This is critical information that the FBI processed and got to prosecutors so they can lawfully use it in a court of law. And our investigation, our interviews continued, but we learned some shocking things when we spoke to his family and friends as well.
You want to share them? Those shocking things?
Sure. And my job as FBI director is not to speak to motive, is to speak to the facts. And that's what I'm going to do. His family has collectively told investigators that he subscribed to left-wing ideology, and even more so in these last couple of years. And he had a text message exchange, he the suspect, with another individual, in which he claimed that he had an opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and he was going to do it because of his hatred for what Charlie stood for. Those are factually accurate investigatory findings by the FBI that we've handed over to the local authorities and the federal authorities to make their prosecutorial decisions. But I believe in this instance of such public importance, the public has a right to know. And I've told you I'm committed to transparency, and that's what I'm doing here.
Why didn't that person that he was talking to, why didn't that person say something?
Our investigation is ongoing. That's a great question. And we don't have an answer on that just yet.
But Mr. Director, you're right. Your job is not to speak to ideology. But you do have the BAU, the Behavior Analysis Unit, that are there. And my sources, people that are within the Bureau and outside that used to be FBI, tell me that the BAU has been encouraged.
I'm for conservatism in the United States. Obviously, I've been saying this almost every day. God, country, and family, right? It is absolutely appalling that someone's freedom of speech was silenced by an assassin. But you have to ask some serious questions. Was there a larger organization behind the assassination? And was Turning Point part of the national security state? Let that sink in. Let that sink in.
Not to tackle the transgender issue from an ideology standpoint. Have you heard that? Are you tackling that? I know you've only been there recently, but you can't have a political slant saying we're not going to attack different political ideologies because it's going to offend someone.
You're absolutely right, and that's why me and the deputy have been quarterbacking this investigation ourselves. There is no one at the FBI that's going to politicize this investigation. There's no one at Quantico or anywhere else that is going to say we are not looking at X or Y. We are looking at the facts, and that is why we are releasing the facts in record fashion. If you go back and look at historical cases like Luigi Mangione and the Boston bombing, how long did it take the Bureau to release information to the public? We're not doing that. Those two manhunts took 5 days, and they happened in downtown major metropolises. We apprehended our suspect in 33 hours because we were transparent and open with the American public, and we're going to continue to do that. So anyone that thinks that the FBI is not on top of its game, and that me and the deputy and everybody in leadership in our Salt Lake City field office in Quantico is doing anything politically, I'm not having it. And if you've heard anything else about it, they are lying to you. We're on it.
That's why
there were lots of killings that have taken place, mass shootings, since Trump's second term. All right. Why is it that the FBI is so verbal about this? Oh, well, you know, a simple explanation is that Charlie Kirk was a very popular conservative political pundit. Okay. I mean, that's maybe true. Or was there something, or, you know, is there something a little bit more to this? Especially when you start following the money and it's going to Greenwich, Connecticut. And the big donors. You ever wonder, like, with Bannon and that Guo Chinese billionaire that ended up being convicted for fraud and all this stuff? Was he a double agent? He was spun as an informant for the United States to understand what's going on internally with the CCP. But it also seemed like there was infighting within the CCP, and he was part of one of the sides that was actually with President Xi, not against President Xi, but it's almost like double agent, maybe even triple agent kind of stuff with him. It's so odd. It's hard to get a grasp on what it is. He was for himself, but he was also for providing information to the FBI and the CIA, but the CIA wanted to say that he couldn't be trusted, but the FBI said that he could be trusted, that he had good information. He was tied to Bannon. Bannon's tied to the Greenwich Republicans. Charlie Cook is tied to the Greenwich Republicans. I'm not saying that Guo was tied to Turning Point, because my understanding is there's no connection. But the point here is that there's some really weird characters, and you wonder, like, how do these people grow so fast? Like Bannon, how did he grow so fast? There's something more to this.
One point that you came on and it thrilled you are. A couple other things. I have two quick questions. One, is it true what the governor said yesterday, that he had a written note that you're looking into now prior to the assassination? Did he have a note? And the other one question is, the person that was texting with him about I have a shot.
I'm sorry, I kind of like, I just had a thought here. Remember Stephen Bannon? He was always saying CCP virus. He never admitted that it was the USA CCP virus, and that was one of the bones of contention I had with Stephen Bannon. I'm all about the America First policy and blah blah blah, right? But you gotta remember, he was being funded. His operations were being funded by what? But through GTV. It was called GTV. It was the conduit company. So wait a minute here. Bannon doesn't really push the narrative of Barrick and USA development. They was really pushing the CCP development. Now, if you have a national security state that wants to hide, the U.S. national security state wants to hide what their activities were in biologics, Doesn't it make a lot of sense to find some sort of informant that is a billionaire, that's well connected, telling you and spilling the beans about the CCP, and then have it projected by a nationalist like Bannon? It's a CCP virus. There's something deeper going on here. Now, is that tied to Charlie Kirk? No. But I'm just saying that there's webs of influence. There's webs of influence that no one's talking about. How much money did Hanley provide Turning Point? What were the revenue streams of Turning Point? And how was it heavily connected to the national security state of the United States? Or the Trump administration? Or key people within the administration? Or key donors to the administration? Now, Hanley already passed away. But the thing is that money was flowing into Turning Point from this establishment within Greenwich, Connecticut. But we're told that all he did was have a mic and he just went to campuses and he became popular. Now, if there's an operation to try to change the negative influences of Marxism and move them towards conservatism, that may be a CIA operation. Charlie Cook didn't finish college. That's a common theme of people that go to the CIA. Now, I'm not saying he was CIA. I'm just saying that there's something strange about this. Something strange. What is it? And then all of a sudden you're starting to see on X about the Smith modernization modified by Obama. Hello, Diamond, myself, and Farmer Jones talked about it in 2020, over 5 years ago. 5 years ago, we talked about Smith Munn. 5 years ago. And it's just starting to pop up now.
Now, Charlie Kirk, can that person be charged?
So I'll take.
Berlusconi famously said, "I'm condemned to win."
Berlusconi è una persona complessa. So I'll take those in reverse. The charging decisions are up to our great partners at the Department of Justice and the Attorney General, who have been wonderful providing resources during this entire process. And we'll let them speak to any charging decisions. But we, the FBI, are investigating. As I said, our investigation is ongoing. We're interviewing dozens and dozens of suspects, subjects, witnesses, and the like, and continuing to examine forensic information, including cell phone data and DNA analyses. And once we make those findings, hand it over to our partners, as we're doing in real time, they'll make those decisions. And I'm sorry, Brian, I forgot your other.
You had a written note. Did he write a written note before the assassination attempt? That's what the governor said yesterday. And what did that say? If you could
So what
share
I'm able to say, I'm sorry. So what I'm able to say is I addressed it partially earlier, is that the written note, we believe what did exist, and we have evidence to show what was in that note, which is, and I'm going to summarize, basically saying, the suspect wrote a note saying, I have the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it. That note was written before the shooting.
Do you ever wonder? I mean, I've been living a long time. I mean, I'm in my 50s, all right? So I've been living multiple decades. I've seen a lot, all right? I can't tell you one time where the FBI director goes on national television and spilling the beans of what the evidence is. Not one time on any mass shooting, mass anything. They're always coy. They keep it to their best. As they say, it's an ongoing investigation. You know, if you have any information, contact us, blah, blah, blah. Why is he going on national TV? Now, some people would say, well, it's to convince the conservatives that the FBI is on the ball and that they're going to get their guy. That's one explanation. Another explanation might be the FBI is projecting to the ones that may have been involved in the assassin circle, especially in Discord, to spill the beans and help. But usually these things are very quiet, and the evidence is then presented in the court. Why is it that it has to be now? Why is it that they're going on national television and spilling the beans of what the evidence is? I can't remember one time where it was a major event and there was this much information being spilled out. So why is that? Is it incompetence by the director? Is it done on purpose? And if it's done on purpose, why? Something is odd about this. Something is odd. What is it?
Evidence of its existence, we now have learned, existed before the shooting, was in the location in the suspect and partner's home. But we have since learned that the note, even though it has been destroyed, we have found forensic evidence of the note, and we have confirmed what that note says because of our aggressive interview posture at the FBI.
Wait, what note is he talking? Wait, what note is he talking? I've been bouncing back and forth and lost the flow of this conversations. Let me just rewind a little bit and then let me capture it again here.
Hand it over to our partners as we're doing it in real time. They'll make those decisions. And I'm sorry, Brian, I forgot your other
You had a written note. Did he write a written note before the assassination attempt? That's what the governor said yesterday. And what does that say? If you could
so what I'm able to say, I'm sorry. So what I'm able to say is I addressed it partially earlier, is that the written note, we believe, did exist, and we have evidence to show what was in that note, which is, and I'm going to summarize, basically saying, the suspect wrote a note saying, I have the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it. That note was written before the shooting. Evidence of its existence, we now have learned, existed before the shooting, was in the location in the suspect and partner's home. But we have since learned that the note, even though it has been destroyed, we have found forensic evidence of the note, and we have confirmed what that note says because of our aggressive interview posture at the FBI.
So I don't know what that means. I mean, how does the governor know that there was a note, but yet it was destroyed? Unless they went to the home and he wrote it on a piece of paper or in a book, and there's an impression, and you can see the impression of the note that he made. There seems to be something odd with this story here. Now, maybe he's being coy, I don't know, but it doesn't seem to fully map with what Cox said. Governor Cox from Utah. Something's a little odd with that. I don't know. I'd have to rewatch what Governor Cox said to get a better idea of who destroyed the note. Why was it destroyed? How did the FBI find this part of the story is a little weird to me. Now, maybe there's other people analyze. I don't want to be Sherlock Holmes on this. I really don't fucking care. But the thing is that I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I'm looking at it from a national security perspective. I'm looking at it from the perspective of power players from Greenwich, Connecticut. I'm looking at it from the perspective of social norms at the societal level changing. The conservative movement, the pendulum is swinging towards conservatism. There's too much of an ultra-liberal bias in academia, and kids are getting brainwashed with Marxism. That's what I'm looking at, not the fine details of the investigation. I don't want to be Sherlock Holmes, but the thing is that this story, there's something it's odd to me. There's something weird about it.
I'm curious, and there has been some criticism, so I appreciate you coming on our program and discussing it with our audience. Can you tell us what was happening on the ground? Apparently, according to sources, you weren't getting some information, you requested photos, and you were being stonewalled. Now, I think it's important to know there's always some sort of tension between local cops on the ground and the feds. They want to handle their own investigation, but of course, with an investigation of this magnitude, you have to step in. You have the resources. But can you explain? Was it the local field office?
Think
Was it
about
the state
it.
police?
He's the Fox and Friends guy that's talking right now, whatever his name is. He's asking a question. I'm not sure if he's just giving a softball to the FBI or if he's actually trying to be a true journalist here. But if there was video stills that were freeze-framed of the assassin, and no one knew at that time who it was, right? Why is it that the local police wouldn't be willing to give it to the FBI right away? Why would there be that tension? Now, how would you control if this was an operation? But it's a hypothesis. I'm not saying this is what, I'm just stating a hypothesis. I'm not stating a theory. I'm not stating a conspiracy theory. I'm just stating a hypothesis. If you were to try to control the narrative of either it being a state action and work with the assassin, or a state action working with Turning Point, you would be using the apparatus of the federal government to control the narrative. And it would be hard to control the local level, because the local level is totally out of the loop. They don't know what's going on. To them, it's just an assassin on the roof. They don't know who it is, and they're trying to find out. All right. So there seems to be a little bit of a tension between the FBI and the local government, and they went over and above saying, oh, we're working so closely together and blah, blah, blah. Well, if you're working so closely together at the very beginning, why is this journalist even asking the question? Because obviously at the very beginning, they weren't working closely together. So what's really the story here? What's really the story here? I don't like conspiracy theories. You know, I don't like going down the rabbit hole and, you know, and all this stuff, because it's a lot of times it's a waste of time. And life is too short. But I'll tell you, there's something weird about this. Let me rewind a little bit and then continue playing here.
You requested photos and you were being stonewalled. Now, I think it's important to know there's always some sort of tension between local cops on the ground and the feds. They want to handle their own investigation, but of course, with an investigation of this magnitude, you have to step in. You have the resources. But can you explain, was it the local field office? Was it the state police? What was going on?
So the local authorities have been fantastic.
Okay.
The local sheriff, the state PD have been wonderful. And any investigation, as you hinted to, of this magnitude has so many people in it, because I've made the decision to surge so many resources. And to get the information up to me was of the utmost priority. So I worked with my team to say, hey, there's not going to be any delays. We're not going to do it the way we normally do things. So the only thing that people were doing at the FBI was how they knew how to do things. I had to expedite that process. That's my job. That's what I thought this case deserved. And that's what this case was rightly calling for.
Why is the standard procedure at the FBI to slow walk evidence? Why? Shouldn't it be, you know, the speed of light in terms of investigation, that nothing should be slow walked? I mean, if that's true, if what he's saying is true, and let's just give him the benefit of the doubt, then there's a serious problem with our FBI and the way they conduct investigations. They need to share information. But maybe what it is that the FBI wants to do it slowly to prevent leaks. I'm trying to give Patel a benefit of the doubt. But there's something very odd with this. Very odd. Especially when I learned when I learned reading out of that book, just happenstance, out of the haves and the have-yachts, about Greenwich Republicans and how they were tied to Bannon and how they were tied to Turning Point. And there was a faction within them. It was split because you have the Prescott Bush types, and then the old establishment, Greenwich establishment Republican, and then you have this newer America First.
Made the tough calls, but I wasn't critical of anyone in particular. I just said we got to move faster, and that was my call to make it. If there's any criticism there, you can put it right here.
Who wasn't giving you information, Director? Who wasn't giving you the photos when you requested them quickly, and it didn't make it to you? Who denied that order?
It's not a denial of the order. Just to clarify, I'm glad we're talking about this. The photos were produced. They just weren't produced in a timely fashion that I felt was appropriate for an investigation of this magnitude. So I came in and I accelerated that process.
So in the
how is this any different than some other mass shootings under Trump's watch? What about churches being shut up? Or it's okay to just slow walk that, or just standard procedure. You don't have to really push. But if it's an organization that gets a lot of money from Greenwich, Connecticut, you got to speed it up. See the point I'm making here? He's proving what I've been saying. Is there's special circumstances or considerations, special considerations because of this. But why? Why?
When we were still looking for the guy, I know you posted that we got him, and that ended up not being true. You took some incoming because of that. What led to you posting that? Why did you feel so certain about it? And what do you have to say about the criticism?
No, I appreciate this opportunity. Look, as I stated, I was being transparent with working with the public on our findings as I had them. I stated in that message that we had a subject and that we were going to interview him, and we did, and he was released. The job of the FBI is not just to manhunt the actual suspect who did the killing or suspects, but it's also to eliminate targets and eliminate subjects who are not involved in the process, and that's what we were doing. Could I have worded it a little better in the heat of the moment? Sure. But do I regret putting it out? Absolutely not. I was telling the world what the FBI was doing as we were doing, and I'm continuing to do that. And I challenge anyone out there to find a director that has been more transparent and more willing to work the media on high-profile cases, or any case the FBI is handling, than we have been.
There have been multiple mass shootings. There have been multiple mass shootings under his watch, under the FBI. There have been multiple mass shootings under Trump's second term, and the FBI has not discussed this in mainstream media as fervently. But why is it different for Charlie Kirk? Is it because he's a conservative? Because he was tied to the Trump administration? Because he had such inroads? Because of the establishment? And that establishment has a lot of money? And that the ground zero of that money is Greenwich, Connecticut? Through the Greenwich Republicans? Is that what it's all about? So if your church next to you gets blown away by a mass shooter, you won't get the same response? Something's weird about this.
That guy was part of the plot to distract you while this guy got away. Do you think there's any connection between two of those people that stood up and acted crazy at that moment?
Well, as it's now been publicly reported, some of these people were taking claims for this horrific act of violence, and they had nothing to do with it. Others were working what we call a daisy chain analyses, And this is where the cell phone data dumps are so important. We're seeing who talked to who, not just in chat groups. We're seeing who texted who was around who. We're using our geofencing capabilities to map out exactly where individuals were. And then we're also getting into their personal cell phone information to say, were you calling so-and-so? Were you texting so-and-so? And we know the suspect was communicating with folks. But as I've said, that cell phone tower information, you got to get it the right way, with search warrants, with lawful authority, so that our prosecutors can use it in court for whatever investigations they decide to prosecute.
Cash, he's not saying a word. He's not admitting it. Is he remorseful? And what happens to him? Does he get death penalty?
Well, I'll let the state authorities speak to their prosecution, which is ongoing. As I think your summary is correct, based on my information that I have, he has not been cooperating in terms of interrogations with our law enforcement officials.
And Mr. Director, we always appreciate it because every time there's silence, that's when the conspiracy theories pop up. Yeah. So we appreciate you coming out with us today and just telling people what you know. Appreciate it, Mr. Director.
Thank you so much.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brighteon Channel.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
Everyone, I'm switching subjects here. Everyone remember Lehman? You know, the crisis that blew up the financial world, you know, and led to a major balance sheet increase at the Federal Reserve and quantitative easing to infinity. Well, regulations are changing. And so these complex derivatives they're starting up again. They're starting up again. Now, I'm a Trump supporter. I voted for him 3 times, all right? And I believe in many of the policies that he says. I'm all about bringing back a conservative mindset, having a stronger military, bringing back the economic engine and that economic clustering back to the United States. But I'll tell you, we are making the same damn mistake when they repealed Glass-Steagall under Clinton, brought to you by Larry Summers, the economist. This is a bad idea. Now, a lot of people will be making money in 3, 4, 5, 6 years, but then they'll blow up the economy. But Trump will be away. Trump will be done. He'll be like, the economy was great when I was in. Well, I don't know what happened. Not understanding that his activities with deregulation with some of these derivative markets will actually lead to a pernicious effect that will blow up the economy in 6 years. Fucking dumbass. Dumbass. All right, we're going to go to The Hill and their perspective on this. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the nattokinase. Nattokinase is fibrinolytic. It's going to break up clots. It also helps with your lipid profile. It helps with your cardiovascular system. The foundation for my protocol is a multivitamin and a probiotic. The complete multivitamin is an easy-to-digest multivitamin that will give you the vitamins that you need as cofactors for enzymatic activity, so your cells perform properly. It's a great foundation, and again, it's easy to digest. Take it every day. And also, get either my powdered probiotic or my VeggieCap probiotic. Take either one, but take it every day. Drink it with filtered water, and with a good probiotic, you're improving the health of your gut. You're improving the immune system of the gut. You're improving your metabolism. Your energy levels will improve. You're going to be able to absorb your nutrients better. You're going to be able to communicate with your brain and your liver through your gut. And with that, you're going to sleep better, because with the proper gut biome, you actually produce melatonin and you're going to sleep better. Amazing how that works. And when you sleep better, and you're getting into those 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep, you're detoxifying your central nervous system, you're consolidating memory, and you're going to be well rested. And when your body is well rested and is more in a sympathetic mode instead of, if your body is more in a parasympathetic mode and not in a sympathetic mode, then your body is going to heal. Why? Because when you're in parasympathetic mode, you have less cortisol that's produced. And if you have high levels of cortisol chronically, that is immunosuppressive. You want to not do that. So you want to go into parasympathetic mode, not sympathetic mode. But if you are sleep deprived all the time, you have high levels of cortisol and you're in sympathetic mode. It's like a fight and flight response. And therefore you're not detoxifying your central nervous system. So don't be surprised that you end up having early onset of dementia. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotics and improve your gut health. And you're also going to notice improvement of your skin. So stack the probiotics with the multivitamin, and that's a great foundation to build off of to slow down the aging process and boost up that immune system. And oh, by the way, the fall and the winter is going to be problematic in the United States. You better prepare. You better prepare. But if you don't, it's your own damn fault.
Good morning and welcome to Rising. Thanks for starting your week off with us, with myself and Lindsay. Nice to see you.
Good morning. I meant to tell you, I saw all those invasive species all day.
The lanternflies.
Yes, and
They're really bad.
They were like in the doorway of my apartment.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, I'm over.
They were in my apartment.
And I don't want to drag everybody else who's not experiencing this, it's not in DC that's watching us, but it's a big problem.
It is unpleasant.
Well, coming up on Rising, I'll be discussing the tragic incident where ICE officials shot and killed a Chicago man after he allegedly resisted arrest.
Plus, Pete Buttigieg is backing Kamala Harris by saying that former President Biden should have never run for re-election in the first place.
And Fox News host Brian Kilmeade is apologizing after a questionable comment that he made on the network. But first, of course, Robbie, what's on your radar?
Well, let's get to it. Just days after the shocking murder of conservative media personality Charlie Kirk, we are learning new details about his alleged killer, 22-year-old Utah man Tyler Robinson. Now, while there's some still contradictory information concerning his motivations and thus every reason to be cautious and to wait for further confirmation, authorities are claiming that Robinson was indeed motivated by what appear to be left-leaning grievances. Specifically, he disliked Kirk for spreading hate, and additionally, Robinson's roommate, who was cooperating with the authorities, was his boyfriend. Now, that roommate is a transgender individual.
You notice if you listen to a lot of these TikTokers and all, and even on X, they're anti Charlie Kirk, and they say that he spread hate. No, they just don't like the way he did his rhetoric. He didn't spread hate, but what he did spread was religion. Now, if you're a demon, all right, and you're getting sprinkled with scripture and purified holy water, you're going to think that that's hateful. So Charlie Kirk wasn't a hateful person. He was bombastic, that's for sure, and he believed in conservative ideals. But that's like holy water to a liberal or an ultra liberal. So they just, what it is they don't want to be told. You know what? Living a life of an ultra liberal is actually antithetical to the Bible. In many cases, not all liberals are antithetical to the Bible, but many are, especially with the self-centeredness and their sexual proclivities.
Of transitioning from male to female. This information was confirmed by Utah Governor Spencer Cox, who, in my opinion, has distinguished himself for his calm, collected, cool-headed approach to dealing with this horrific tragedy. Here's what Cox said about Robinson in an interview with ABC.
We're
yesterday that we can confirm that his roommate was indeed a boyfriend who is transitioning from male to female. That's information that the FBI had mentioned yesterday. We can confirm that as well, and that he is cooperating with authorities as well.
Again, I want to emphasize cautiousness because we definitely don't have all the facts yet. Let me say that as plainly as possible. Jumping to conclusions helps no one. Because just because something is alleged by a friend or family member or a neighbor of the perpetrator, or even by the police, it doesn't mean it's necessarily true. For instance, The Guardian reported on Friday that a high school friend of Robinson's had confirmed his left-wing views. Then, unfortunately, The Guardian had to retract the quotes from that entire story after the friend contradicted himself. The easiest way not to end up looking like a fool is to take a deep breath and wait for more information.
Follow the money, and it's going to go straight to Greenwich, Connecticut.
It's no one. But all that throat clearing aside, a picture of the shooter is emerging. The transgender roommate / partner, the weird and edgy online memes inscribed into the shell casings of the gun, the bullet that was fired by the gun, the contention that Kirk was spreading hate, the postings of both Robinson and his roommate on social media, all these facts are beginning to suggest a very online leftist ideology. Now, while this does not mean that people who self-identify as being on the left are responsible, it does mean that attempts by progressives to paint the shooter as maybe or perhaps a MAGA person who is even more to the right than Charlie Kirk, well, those are not panning out very much. Now, one such progressive was Harvard professor Lawrence Tribe, who wrote on X, Kirk's assassin appears to have been ultra MAGA. He later took that post down. Wajahat Ali, a left-wing writer and columnist, wrote on X, Tyler Robinson, Kirk's alleged shooter, is a white man from a Trump-supporting conservative family that loved guns. He used all the language and references that Reuters use. MAGA will spin and turn and pivot and lie and distract.
Have you noticed that the ultra-liberal, they hate these things like biblical verses saying that, having a family is important, that life is important, that killing a fetus is bad? But that's hateful speech when you say that, according to an ultra-liberal. But not just that. The Bible is based on a Kabbalistic concept that includes the Old Testament and the New Testament. It's all based on Kabbalah, all right? And Kabbalah is based on this whole idea of male-female, right? And if you paid attention to the Old Testament, it talks about the abomination of males copulating together. Why? Because that does not map with the Sephirah. It doesn't map Kabbalistically. It has to have a male-female component. But that's hateful speech. No, it's actually the Bible.
Will believe it, but they aren't the majority. And then he doubled down in an interview he gave for a Substack. Let's watch.
As I've been identified, allegedly, the alleged shooter is Tyler Robinson, 22 years old, white, straight, male, Christian, with a conservative background, Second Amendment supporter, experienced firearm.
Cox said that he had a relationship with his roommate that is transitioning. So was he straight? No. See what it is the liberals, the Marxists, they want to this must be a Trump supporter because he liked guns. And so they want to demonize the Second Amendment, not realizing that our founding fathers said that the Second Amendment protects the actual First Amendment. And if you don't have the Second Amendment, you don't have a First Amendment. There's a reason why it's called the Second Amendment, to protect the First Amendment. Because if you have a government or a group of people taking away your freedom of the First Amendment, then guess what? If you don't have recourse through the Second Amendment, you will be able to have the First. Look at what's happening in Britain. They don't have a First Amendment. They don't have a Second Amendment either. So maybe the wisdom of our founding fathers had something on this. Maybe. I suspect that the average citizen in the United States, especially the average Marxist, educated liberal, isn't as smart as Hamilton. I could be wrong, but I don't think so.
Their good son, outside of murder, was law-abiding. His household, Republican household, MAGA household, Blue Lives Matter household, Second Amendment right household, taught to shoot since a young age.
And if that is all true, that his household was conservative, but he goes to school, he goes to university, he's hanging around with the wrong crowd, a bunch of blue-haired liberals. You have core requirements at your university, and you have liberal or ultra-liberal professors spewing ultra-liberalism and Marxism and socialism and collectivism and how bad the Second Amendment is and how bad the conservative movement is. And eventually, you get brainwashed. So maybe he's proven the point that maybe higher education is the problem.
Ex-sheriff convinced Tyler to turn himself in.
Well, in case you don't know, the Breakers are an online far-right subculture that dislikes Charlie Kirk and other more mainstream conservatives for being insufficiently anti-Semitic. If Robinson was a Breaker, this would somewhat change the media narrative, of course. Although, as I pointed out, it's theoretically possible he could have been both far-right and far-left at different times, even at the same time. You don't have to have some neatly sorted out political...
I don't understand this Groiper. I don't understand this term Groiper. I mean, maybe I'm just old-fashioned. But why don't we use the regular English dictionary and, describe things the way most people do instead of having some sort of generational jargon? What the hell is this? So we got a society that doesn't even use the English language anymore.
So with mental health problems, they're even less consistent. However, there just isn't really much evidence at this point that he's a Groiper. The insistence coming from progressives that, yeah, he was MAGA, that looks like wishful thinking from people who don't want their own political tribes to bear responsibility for what happened. Now, let's take our time, figure out what did happen, and then punish the person or persons who are to blame. But we are getting, Lindsay, a clearer picture of the shooter, and it does seem to be what we assumed from the beginning, that he disliked Charlie Kirk's harmful, in his view, hateful views, quite possibly about transgender people. That's the issue Charlie Kirk was addressing when the shot was fired, and he was in a relationship with a transgender person. They expressed left-wing views online. That roommate is cooperating fully with law enforcement, which is great. There's been no indication whatsoever that the roommate had any knowledge of, forewarning of, involvement of this horrific crime. And is cooperating, and that's great. The alleged shooter is not cooperating, has not confessed to law enforcement, so we will still have to spend some time gathering information, but that's where we are.
The finger pointing to me is the issue. I mean, when we talk about what the conversation largely has been, let's say, even after the recent unfortunate shootings, has been a conversation on the Republican side of the aisle saying maybe transgender people should be considered as people who shouldn't have access to guns, right? Because they're assuming it's a mental health issue. So when you're conflating everything that we've been talking about recently and then naming that his partner was transgender, I still don't see how his partner being transgender connects the transgender person to the incident, right? The person that actually killed Charlie Kirk was a man who grew up in a Republican-leaning Utah with a Republican registered parents.
Right.
And he's not Republican. No, but he's not Republican. He also is an unaffiliated voter. And so he doesn't have any registration alignment on his last voting record that anybody can find, including the New York Times. And so trying to figure out who he more aligns with, to me, is a foolish task, when the task really should be how to get...
The task should be look at the university and the classes that he's taking and the teachers that are teaching him. And I'm willing to bet that he was influenced by liberal teachers and his friends that happen to be liberal. You know, maybe there's some wisdom, maybe, just maybe, you know, let's just, you know, there's some wisdom in the Bible, right? Now, if you're Christian, it's 2,000 years, a 2,000-year-old, you know, New Testament, right? But it goes a lot farther with the Old Testament. And the core principles in there are that your behavior affects society. So maybe that some of those lessons should be applied to today so we don't keep on having the same problems like the Greeks. You know? What was the fall of the Greeks? They butt-fucked a bunch of sheep all the time.
Criminal the maximum punishment that they deserve for killing someone. And I see the discourse online, but I don't see how this contributes to the conversation because both of us have friends on both sides of the aisle, and both of them have seen these friends condemn this. And so when I look at online, we're bolstering the narrative of negativity and that people were actually saying that somebody on either side of the aisle should condone this. But what I understand in real life to be happening is that nobody wants to see somebody get executed in this way. And so that's why I don't understand why the top leaders that are supposed to be quelling the noise right now.
No matter if you're Republican or a Democrat or a liberal or a conservative, you should never have your speech silenced by an assassin's bullet. Never, ever, 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 ever. But when it does happen, society needs to really start thinking about perhaps the other side is pushing so many buttons that we're moving towards civil war. Are we moving towards civil war? I would say yes. Now, some people would, you know, or be a little bit more optimistic. Maybe the glass is half full and half empty. And depending on what your personality is, depends on if you're an optimist or a pessimist. But we're moving towards civil war because we don't have civility. Now, if you want to look at the ideals of the Constitution, it doesn't align well with ultraliberalism. Doesn't align well with collectivism. It doesn't align well with Marxism. So as the ultra-left keeps on pushing, it will create a tension that leads to further conflict. And it's the right and the obligation of the citizenry to protect the Constitution. Period. We're not there yet. But I can see that this incivility is leading to civil war.
Realistic conversation. Well, we'll talk more about the reactions in the next segment, but I think the reason why it's important to assert, it's not like, oh, we may never know what his political views are. It's now becoming quite likely his views are left-leaning. Charlie Kirk is a well-known, famous right-wing person with conservative views, including on gender and social issues.
Right. He's a God-fearing man. There's nothing wrong with that. Actually, I think we need a little bit more God-fearing people in this country so we can go back to a conservative mindset. In most cases, when you have a conservative household, the kids are raised better. In most cases. But when you have external pressures from the society, they can, especially if the children are impressionable, they can move away from their conservative value set and move towards a different type of value set that is promoted at these ultra-liberal universities. And when you look at children today, they don't look healthy. They don't look mentally healthy, and they don't look physically healthy. And there's a slew of reasons for it. The scheduling in pediatrics, that's a problem. The food, the quality of the food, the quality of the water and the air, that's a problem. Social stressors, and social media, that's a problem. Overuse of technology, where their IQ levels are going down, that's another problem. I mean, it's proven that Meta, and it wasn't even Meta back then, it was Facebook, but Facebook did research internally to find out how do you have more clicks. See, the internal structure of Facebook was different competing teams had to show that user engagement 6 days out of 7 had to be going up. There was pressure to do that. So they, at the very beginning, created better features on their app, better features on Facebook. But then it met an S-curve, and user engagement didn't grow. So they had researchers come in, like Ph.D.s, coming in to actually analyze what would you need to do. And it ended up that it had to go dark. It had to be negative to be able to get more user engagement. And they did that. And they created algorithms that promoted the negativity. Same thing happened with Twitter. Same thing, if you watch X, it's the same issue. So these social programs, this social media knows that it gets better user engagement with low context negativity. Low context meaning short videos or negative memes to allow for the doom scrolling. So does that help your kids? No, it makes them stupid. Literally, the IQs of these kids are going down, not up. And then they have issues, of self-worth. They become depressed. They try to find some group that will help them through that depression. And it's easy to mold these people in this ultra-liberal world now. But Zuckerberg's a billionaire. Zuckerberg made money by making your kids stupid. Is that right? Now you understand why that maybe when there are people that have too much power, too much money, that they should be taxed 75% of their wealth.
And we now have reason to believe that's what would have motivated the shooter. And that's important, especially when left-wing people or progressive people like Wajahad Ali and others are saying, oh, no, well, he said, he came from a Christian family, a white family, he's straight.
Well, the only pushback that I would say is, I was looking through all the time. So I wanted to make sure, because I know and can acknowledge that a lot of dialogue is used around President Trump and other Republican leaders by Democrats, the word fascist, the Gestapo, all these conversations that we're having. So I looked up how many times Republicans are doing it, and it's pretty equal. Like, we look at Ben Shapiro, he's called the Democrats fascist. We look at Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's tweeted fascist. I mean, don't quote me, go check. We look at President Trump on the campaign trail, he's called the Democrats fascist. So when I see fascist writing on a bullet, I don't attribute that bullet to any of those people I just named, or any Republican for that matter. I attribute it to the criminal. And so I think when we start trying to figure out who was most aligned with the views of a killer, we are completely missing the point on actually having dialogue that would help the country get to a better place than we are now, which is very divisive.
All right, well, we'll discuss that more in our next segment. Coming up, conservatives are orchestrating a mass firing campaign against social media users who celebrated Charlie Kirk's death. Is that appropriate? We'll debate. Stay with us.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You're going to need to get the lozenges and the drops. Why? Because the fall and the winter is coming, and you're going to need to be prepared. Now, maybe you're not paying attention to the news. Maybe you're not even paying attention to your wastewater. But guess what? Something's coming, and you better be prepared. Please go to my store and get the drops. The drops are smaller than the lozenges. You get 100 in each bag. You can get it in cherry, in honey and lemon, and also in blueberry. Take them right away if you have some sort of irritation in your throat. Mitigate the problem right away. I also have in stock elderberry zinc. Now, the lozenges are larger than the drops. You get 21 in each bag. Get a few bags for your household. Be prepared. Have some at work or at home. You're going to need it. Trust me, you're going to need it. But you may not want to pay attention, and then don't be surprised if something happens. Vitamin C and magnesium helps with your skin, your immune system, and your brain function. Magnesium is super important, and guess what? In 5 years, you're going to know about 30% of the people that you know that are 40 years of age or older. They're probably going to get early onset of dementia. Now, magnesium and zinc helps with brain function and also the immune system. Stack them together, drink filtered water, take them every day, boost up that immune system. You're going to need that for, guess what? The fall and the winter. Olive leaf extract, dual purpose supplement. It's going to bring down inflammation and help with your lipid profile. It's going to help to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. That's super important. You know why? Because less plaque formation at the vascular level. And by bringing down inflammation, you're also boosting up your immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the olive leaf extract, take it every day, boost up that immune system, and help with your cardiovascular system. And when you're doing these things on a regular basis and eating properly and doing the 4 modalities of exercise and getting proper sleep, proper mindfulness, stay away from the screens all the time. I got too many screens. But when you do this, when you have a holistic approach and you follow the supplement protocol, you're going to notice that you're slowing down the aging process and your immune system is improving. And that's super important, especially in the aftershock of 2020. Now, you can take my advice or don't take my advice. I don't care. But what I'm saying works. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's listen into Fox News, something about Bongino.
So good morning, everyone. On this Monday morning, we saw an outpouring of support from coast to coast over the weekend, north into Canada for the late Charlie Kirk. Now people across the country now are paying tribute, as we say. Although somber weekend, we'll get to everything this coming week. We'll take it day by day. I'm Bill Hemmer. Dana's got the week off. Welcome to our coverage as we begin anew to our old friend.
Top couple of days. Good morning to you. Good to see you. I'm Aisha Husney, and this is America's Newsroom. So it was a weekend of remembrance, Bill. Everybody from musicians to athletes and everyday Americans all mourning Charlie Kirk.
Charlie, 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 Charlie. So now we know that Charlie Kirk's memorial service is set for Sunday in Arizona. President Trump will be there. It will be held in a football stadium where the Arizona Cardinals play. Capacity 78,000 possibly. This is Charlie Kirk's widow, Erica, reacted to the assassination on Friday evening and then sent out. Do
you think that happens for a normal mass shooting? Do you think that happens to a normal assassination of the freedom of speech? Charlie Kirk was well connected to money, East Coast money. There's more to the story here.
These photos from over the weekend. She vows to continue his legacy and make the movement even stronger than what he started.
Meanwhile, Bill, we are still learning more about his suspected assassin. Officials are telling us that he is not cooperating with them,
But his family and his friends are talking. And FBI Director Kash Patel gave us an update on this investigation this morning. Listen.
I can report today that the DNA hits from the towel that was wrapped around the firearm and the DNA on the screwdriver are positively processed for the suspect in custody. The suspect wrote a note saying, I have the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and I'm going to take it. That note was written before the shooting. Evidence of its existence, we now have learned, existed before the shooting, was in the location in the suspect and partner's home. But we have since learned that the note, even though it has been destroyed, we have found forensic evidence of the note, and we have confirmed what that note says because of our aggressive interview posture at the FBI.
We're going to get into all of that with FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino. He's here with us this morning, but first let's go to Garrett Tenney. He is in Spanish Fork, Utah. Good morning to you.
Aisha, good morning to you. Apart from that note that Director Patel mentioned, we have also learned that Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin also sent a text message to a different individual saying essentially the same thing, that he had an opportunity to take Charlie out and that he was going to do it because he hated what Charlie stood for. So this is part of the investigation now, looking into who knew what and when. And as part of that, we've learned the FBI is investigating left-wing groups in Utah to see if they knew about the accused killer's plans or provided him with any kind of help.
We're seeing who talked to who, not just in chat groups. We're seeing who texted who was around who. We're using our geofencing capabilities to map out exactly where individuals were. And then we're also getting into their personal cell phone information to say, were you calling so-and-so? Were you texting so-and-so? And we know the suspect was communicating with folks.
We're also getting a glimpse into the suspect's mindset during the days after the assassination. This new surveillance video obtained by TMZ shows the 22-year-old walking up to UVU's campus the morning of the shooting, just as about 4 hours before it happened, wearing a maroon shirt and light-colored shorts. We know he later changed into this outfit that the FBI released images of. After those images went out, we've learned that some of the suspect's friends in an online group chat were joking that he looked just like the man in those pictures. The New York Times reports that the suspect allegedly replied that his doppelganger was trying to, quote, get me in trouble. And when another friend joked that the group had turned him in for the reward, the suspect allegedly said, quote, only if I get a cut. Back here at the Utah County Jail, officials tell us the suspect is being held in a separate unit under special watch to make sure he doesn't hurt himself or others before his first court appearance tomorrow. We're told he will appear virtually and that ahead of that hearing, prosecutors will formally file charges against him. Aisha?
Okay, Garrett Tenney, live for us. Garrett, thank you.
So Dan Bongino is the FBI Deputy Director, and sir, thank you for your time this morning. Important stuff here after a very heavy weekend. Thank you for being here. I want to go back to last week on the day that he was killed. Try and clear up a few things as best we can. Did anyone in that crowd aid or assist this assassination?
Well, that's what we're looking into now, Bill. Obviously, we have a suspect in custody. It's quite clear. That's why I'm here discussing this individual. However, if this was a larger effort, there was any aiding and abetting, whether it be financial, whether it be someone who knew the specifics of it and failed to report that. As you heard the director say this morning, we as an FBI, our team, along with our state and local partners, are looking into that. We have a lot of technical capabilities, a lot of good investigative capabilities, where we can scrub that entire network, whether it's OSINT, open source intel, through social media that people posted publicly. We'll be looking at that. We'll also be dropping a lot of paper, a lot of subpoenas out there to take a look to see if there was any extended network. But I want to be clear, there are things I can say, as you well know today, and things I can't. I don't want to get ahead or jeopardize the investigation. But what I can share with you, Bill, I will. We are clinging to transparency here. This is the era of the Cronkite and Jennings generation is over. New media now is media. And we want to be sure we can do everything in our power to share what we can, when we can, while still balancing the needs of the investigation.
Okay, I heard Kash Patel 90 minutes ago in our program. We'll get to just a couple of things that he made news on, but first I want to drill on this. Is there any connection at all between the person who was asking the question about mass shooters and trans killers, or was that just a stunning coincidence when that single shot was fired?
Well, we're investigating that. don't want to say conclusively right now if there was a connection or not. Sometimes Charlie was known to speak out about these issues. He was a powerful voice. It's not terribly uncommon for him to get questions like that. However, we are looking into that, any potential connection here.
Okay, so I'm not drawing conclusions from your answer, but you're saying it's a possibility. Is that what I hear you saying?
We're looking into everything, though. There's not going to be a stone left unturned if there was anyone involved who aided or abetted. I can't say that in strong enough terms. Every single FBI asset on this team is being applied and used in this investigation.
Okay, after he fired that single fatal shot, we've got the video of him jumping off the backside of the building. Where is the gun when he drops 15 feet down to the...
I'm telling you, someone that has a lot of money picked up the phone and told Trump that they want this investigated, like heavily. They're acting much different than usual, in usual circumstances.
Oh, wow.
Well, if you look at the video, the gun is you'll see in the back of the video, when you're watching the video right there, it appears from the video here that the gun is either in the backpack or on him. When he jumps down, this is where, by the way, this part of the video, this is where we got a significant portion of the forensic evidence in the case, which we had to expedite. We had a number of assets, including fixed wing assets, to be able to fly. Obviously, Salt Lake and that specific area in Provo is not around the corner from FBI labs. It was difficult. But we were able, during that scene, him grabbing that particular side of the building and jumping down, we were able to gather a significant amount of forensic information, which we expedited back to the lab, which was the key, I think, piece of information that we were able to crack this thing open.
Just looking at that video, it's hard to see the weapon, and that's why the question is still obvious to me today. Kash Patel said earlier today that he expressed to someone that he had an opportunity to take out the killer and was going to do it. Did that person do anything with that information?
Yeah, that's what we're really disturbed about. It appears that this was communicated. You see this a lot, Bill, when in targeted violence cases, assassinations, school shootings, where the individual expresses in advance in a good swath of these cases his desire or her desire to do these specific things. That appears to be the case here as well, where the intent component was there in advance, and the target was announced in advance prior. Now, that's the part we want to know. Did they know and not say? Now, Bill, you have to keep in mind, and I don't want anyone to jump to conclusions on this. Did they say it, hear it, and think it was some kind of a joke? That's what we're trying to find out now. But I promise you, if there's a larger network here, we're going to get that out to the public as soon as we can. We really are.
Okay, the reason why this is really important to your investigation, understanding motive that I'll get to in a moment here, is that I believe that if I've got the dates right here, that event was announced 1 week before it happened. And we've got the reporting from over the weekend that said that the killer, the accused killer now, expressed views with his family at a dinner table. And I don't know what the timeline is between when that happened. Was it hours or was it days? I mean, clearly it had to be at least a couple days, if not less. And if he also expressed this opinion that he had an opportunity to take out Kirk and was going to do it, well, when was that message transmitted?
Yeah,
from the point that Charlie was killed.
This is the troubling part of the investigation as I see it now. There appear to have been multiple warning signs. You just laid out some of them. There were people in his network, friends and family, who had stated that he had become more political, that he had become, at some parts, I believe some of his coworkers had stated that he had kind of detached himself when the topic of politics came up and walked away from them. Family members said he'd become more political, leading us to believe that this ideology had infected him and had taken over. And he was just intent, it appears, from the data we've accumulated and the channel
and that note, which we have some evidence may have existed before based on the communications in that channel, that his target was obviously going to be Charlie, and that people knew in advance. The question is, again, I just want to go back to what you had asked before. Did they know? Were they sure of this? Or did they hear this and just write it off? That's what we're going to have to find out. And that's what we're investigating now. Bill, this investigation is just begun. This isn't even the beginning of the beginning. You know, yes, we have a subject in custody. You know, everybody's innocent until proven guilty in our constitutional republic. However, this is not done by any stretch. Our men and women out there in the Bureau have worked tirelessly all weekend. I just got back to D.C. Last night, and Cash and I were out there on the scene. We walked the scene. We went through every single component of it. We saw the evidence up close and personal, and we went out there to be able to make command decisions with our team on the ground. And I think the process, although not perfect, of course, I think the process went pretty well, considering we got him in 33 hours. Okay, yeah, I respect the process here too. The governor, Cox, said he had a leftist ideology. I don't know what issues were important to him. Maybe you can share that with us today. And Cash Patel said, if I got this right, he said, I'm looking at facts, not motive. What's the working theory now as to motive? Well, I think it's pretty clear based on the statements of family members, friends, and some of the messaging we have on these digital footprints left behind, that he clearly had some obsession with Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk is obviously a conservative commentator. That's no secret to anyone out there. So while, again, I don't want to speak in advance and jeopardize the case in any way, I think it's fairly obvious to everyone out there, and there's no need to parse words with it, that clearly this was an ideologically motivated attack. I mean, Charlie Kirk is a conservative commentator who sadly and tragically gave his life, underneath a sign asking people to challenge his ideas, the very essence of our constitutional republic. Bill, if I may, I know it's a news show, but Charlie was my friend. Charlie wasn't my friend. Charlie was my good friend. And I spent the weekend, after coming back from Utah, looking through text exchanges going back years with Charlie.
Conservative pundits, especially the ones that went towards a independent channel on YouTube or Rumble or whatever, they're interconnected. And that interconnection is tied to the funding mechanism in Greenwich, Connecticut, under the Greenwich Republican Party. But keep in mind that there is a faction within them, the America First faction and the Prescott Bush faction.
And it's kind of hard to believe he's not here. So, this has been hard for everyone. And I think it's fair and appropriate for every one of the taxpayers who finances your FBI to ask questions about everything. You know what? It wasn't perfect, but it should be. Next time we'll try to make it more perfect. But I just ask everyone to keep in mind that both Cash and I, this was very emotional for us. We had to put that aside. We had a job to do. And when everything settled down and finally got a little bit of sleep last night, it hit me that, Charlie's not here anymore. And that was tough for everyone. So I'm not asking for anybody's forgiveness for missteps here and there. We got our guy in 33 hours. Everything, we're going to go look at everything when this is done. And next time, when there's a crisis, what we can do well, we can do better.
Now think about it.
Better, we can do it.
Now let's think about it. You have people that are billionaires in Greenwich, Connecticut, richer than you will, than all of your family and all of your friends combined times 1,000, or maybe even 10,000. All right? Don't you think some of them are Freemasons? Don't you? Don't you think? So these codes like 33 and sharing the information out there is to make sure that they're telling the establishment in Greenwich, Connecticut, that certain things are happening? Now, that sounds conspiratorial. That sounds like really weird stuff, but it's very possible. It's very possible. And there's a lot of people out there that think that there's like this major cabal against against America that's, you know, tied to Freemasons and all this stuff. You ever wonder that maybe America is still floating is because of the Freemasons? You ever thought about that? That it's quite the opposite? It's actually a fight against ultraliberalism? Maybe it's also a way to maintain the Constitution? Because guess what? Our government is based on Freemasonry.
Better than that. Yeah. Dan, I'm sorry for your loss, and I appreciate your work in the story and the investigation. It's important to America and the world to figure this out. And I hope we do in quick order, I will say. But thank you for coming on. Thanks. And let's get it right. Thank you, Dan. Thanks.
I'm Steve Goosey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley
I'm telling you, there are people that are very powerful and they're hunting. They're hunting. This is going to get really interesting. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lignans. This will bring down inflammation. It's going to help with your endocrine system and your immune system. And it soaks up free radicals. Boost up that immune system, especially for the fall and the winter. Turmeric soaks up free radicals and brings down pro-inflammatory cytokines. It boosts up your immune system. You're starting to notice a theme here. Ashwagandha root brings down cortisol levels and helps to control your blood glucose levels. Brings down inflammation, helps with the immune system. When you stack this together, you get dual purpose. It helps with your cardiovascular health because by bringing down inflammation and soaking up free radicals, you have less plaque buildup. And this stacks well to help boost up your immune system. I suspect you're really going to need these in the fall and the winter. But if you take it every day, you're actually slowing down the aging process. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Now, who on the internet has told you that Charlie Kirk and Turning Point is tied to the Greenwich Republican establishment and was heavily funded? And that's what launched Turning Point. Not some just some grassroots movement. It didn't work like that. It didn't work like that. Oh, and guess what? Stephen Bannon's tied to it too. Let's listen in on the Hill about Mamdani. But before we do that, let me just plug one more stack. This is a neurostack to help with your brain function. Super, super important. If you're 40 years of age or older, you need to be doing this. Ubiquinol is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10. It'll soak up free radicals, help with the health of your mitochondria. Your electron transport chain produces lots of ATP, so this is going to help you to produce the energy that your cells need, including your neurons, and it's neuroprotective. NAD Plus is a supplement to boost up your NAD Plus levels to have more energy. It will also help to repair DNA damage, cellular DNA and mitochondrial DNA, and help to protect your neurons. Stack them together, super important. If you're 40 years of age or older, you need to be doing this stack, help with your brain function. Take ubiquinol and take the NAD+. Drink it with filtered water.
Perhaps the best one to tell you about who lives here would be me. Brought here lovingly back in '93.
For the Bitchute 4th Mamdani channel.
Senator Chris Van Hollen endorsed Democratic NYC mayoral candidate Zoran Mamdani. He announced his support for the Democratic Socialists over the weekend and scolded his Democratic colleagues for withholding their support, saying, quote, "That kind of spineless politics is what people are sick of. They need to get behind him and get behind him now."
New York Governor Kathy Hochul also threw her weight behind Mamdani. In a New York Times guest essay on Sunday, she expressed giving her decision a, quote, "great deal of thought, and despite disagreements with him, she is endorsing him."
Now think about this. Why would Hochul not go and support Cuomo? Cuomo was the one that launched her career by having her as a lieutenant governor. Then he fell out of favor because of his corruption and was pushed out. And now he's trying to reboot his political legacy. But the polls are showing that Mamdani is probably going to win. So you have the Democratic Party pushing communism in the city of New York. New York City, the epicenter of capitalism, and now we're going to vote in a communist.
President Trump reacted on Truth Social this morning, calling Mamdani little communist, adding, quote, "This is a rather shocking development and a very bad one for New York City. How can such a thing happen? Washington will be watching this situation very closely. No reason to be sending good money after bad." The reaction comes. Trump and his allies are reportedly trying to thwart Mamdani's chances to improve former Governor Andrew Cuomo's chances, but that's not going to work very well.
The part of it that tickles me the most is that President Trump is so deeply involved in this local race. And I understand he has businesses and owns property there. The point is that he is just so involved. I mean, to the point of reportedly trying to offer jobs to both the Republican candidate and Eric Adams to get them out of the race, to have Cuomo, I know they both said no, but reportedly, but also to get Cuomo to win, who's also going to be a Democrat, who also is supposed to not be that closely aligned with him because Democratic voters don't like Cuomo as is, but then also if he's aligned with President Trump, that probably lessens his chances, although they've been friends for 40 years. There's like a bunch here that I'm just not understanding what the tactic is. It seems like scrambling, so that's why it's tickling me, because I'm like, guys, Mamdani's probably going to win, and also Democrats, just because. Why can't we also watch what the other party is doing? They're having disagreements within themselves, and that's okay. Everyone, just because you support Mamdani doesn't mean that you are a Democratic Socialist also. It means that he's trying something new in New York that speaks to what voters are looking for, which is why he's doing so well in the polls. Because it's like, okay, whatever is happening right now is not working. So if you want to make it cheaper for parents to afford childcare, if you want to stabilize housing prices while people still have no money because they're feeling the strains of the economy, even though President Trump was supposed to fix this, if you are going to respond to some of those things and you are going to also implement things that maybe a lot of people don't agree with, like government-run grocery stores, we'll just test them out. We will just test them out. And it's better than what we're doing right now, which is
a grand experiment.
Fine, let it be. But let it be. But if it goes well, then everyone will be happy in New York. And what can go wrong is that people might lose in the midterms that are Republican. President Trump might lose because he offered one thing, or New Yorkers might get it first. So that would be problematic. So I don't see why we can't try his way. Besides that, billionaires maybe have 100,000 less than they had last year because they'll find a way to skirt the taxes. No, they can try it. They can try it. No, they can try again. They can try again. Not in New York, they haven't tried his way. And that can be your argument. Okay, well, there's many things that President Trump has tried his way that haven't worked. We've tried his way on trying to figure out a solution in Russia. We've tried his way, still not working. We're trying the other way. Exactly. So my point is, let New York try what they're going to try. We tried Biden's way. We tried Trump's way.
I'm not in a position to stop them. No, Mamdani's going to win. That's what they want. Fine by me. I mean, I don't like Cuomo anyway, so I would not, if I was the Trump administration, I would not be wasting a single moment of my time trying to get Sliwa and Adams out to support Cuomo. If you could get Cuomo and Sliwa out to support Adams, then you can make an argument for that, because Adams is actually the incumbent mayor. So fine, but it's not going to happen. Mamdani's going to win. The reluctance of the Democrats to admit that this is their candidate for New York City has been kind of funny to me. Kathy Hochul took this long to endorse him. What is she waiting for? If he's going to win.
Well, it's very obvious, right? There's a conversation about what the future of the Democratic Party looks like. We just talked about it with Kamala and Buttigieg about how they're criticizing Biden. Okay, we know that you guys know how to do that. We got it. What is the future of the party? And since that hasn't been very particularly defined, even in LA, I think what's going on is very funny. Nixon's responses to President Trump, that still doesn't define the party. That just is somebody who's fighting fire with fire. Now, what's the policies? What does the next chapter look like? And so if everyone just jumps on board and supports Mamdani, then they are afraid that people are going to think the policies are everything that Mamdani is doing, as opposed to there being levels within a party of different people doing different things, like in MAGA. You got Marjorie Taylor Greene that wants those Epstein files out. You got President Trump who doesn't want them out. Okay? So that's a difference of opinion and thought on a very serious topic, but it's still under one umbrella and it's working out. So why can't Democrats have many people with many dramatically different thoughts under one umbrella, but still offering the same goal, which is transparency, allegedly, right?
Mamdani's party. The Democratic Party is the party of Mamdani. The Democratic base wants Mamdani's policies. They're going to push the Democratic Party to be far left. Someone who 5 short years ago wanted to defund the police, who still wants to defund the police, who just can't say it, who supports government-run grocery stores and everything else. That is the future of the Democratic Party. That's where all the excitement is. There's not enough excitement for the kind of moderate, abundance style policies that I like. I wish the Democratic Party wanted to embrace them. It doesn't. Its base wants to fight Trump with far left stuff. It wants to it's like we should have done Bernie. He would have won, but we did all the moderate people who didn't win, and it's time for a harder lefter politics. And if you're uncomfortable with that as a Democrat, you should. I'm sorry your party's gone, but
it's so interesting because the most uncomfortable person out of all the Democrats is President Trump. He's the most uncomfortable with Mamdani winning. He's the most vocal and anti-Mamdani.
Well, because he doesn't want to live under his policy. Well, I also putting on every billboard, this is my opposition. So the Mamdani AOC party.
And when you think about all Republicans in Congress, in their minds, they are cheering on the idea of Mamdani winning in New York so they can use that as a campaign message in the midterms to say that we're going to win. But President Trump is so self-serving in this instance that he wants to make sure that Mamdani doesn't do anything that affects his real estate and business in New York. No, he's not. Not the word compassion with Elon Musk and President Trump. There are many things. Compassion that doesn't really fall in the wheelhouse of those two.
Their hearts are so big.
No, you're a fraud, Rob. You're all of your population. No, his wallet is so big that he doesn't want Mamdani coming in there and taking some money out. No, okay? And so that's the problem. But some New Yorkers do. You don't live in New York. You're not even fond of New York. So everybody, President Trump, who's worried about the whole country, should worry more about the rest of the country and everything else he has on his plate, like fixing the economy for most Americans, so that Mamdani is not trying to figure out a way to fix the economy in New York, because New York feels it more than a lot of other cities because of how expensive it is there.
Me and my wallet are going to stay here in the District of Columbia, where we are safe from thieves, be they street vandals or the kind of vandals that reside in the highest halls of government, where the real robberies take place, the robberies of the citizens via confiscatory taxation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
No more of that.
We have a lot to talk about, guys. Stay with us.
Telling you, this country is in a big world of hurt. We're starting to have communists running the show now. Thank you, ultra-liberal, for taking away God, country, and family out of the ethos of America. And now we got communists. I guess people really just need to look in the mirror and go, do you really deserve the Constitution? Do you really deserve to have freedom? Maybe you should just live in tyranny for the rest of your life because you weren't willing to fight for it. Amazing. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. All right. We're going to go to Bloomberg here. They're in a commercial break. While we're waiting for Bloomberg to come back online, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Clarity Factor. Clarity Factor gets rid of brain fog. It's going to help to consolidate memory, detoxify your central nervous system, and you'll be well rested and you'll have energy. Now, what this does is that it's going to help with supporting that memory and building those dendritic connections. When you have those dendritic connections, you're going to be able to think faster, and you're going to have better memory. Now, what is amazing is that when you take that foundational part of the protocol, the probiotic and the multivitamin, you're improving your gut biome, and by improving your gut biome, you're actually producing melatonin. Melatonin is going to get you into those cycles of REM sleep that you need, all right? Which helps to detoxify your central nervous system and consolidate memory and help with having energy because you're in those 5 cycles of REM sleep. With Clarity Factor, it stacks really well with the probiotics. You're going to be able to concentrate, get rid of that brain fog. You're going to be able to concentrate, and it's going to help with that supporting of that memory. All right, when you get that better dendritic connections, you're going to have a better functioning neural network. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Clarity Factor. Clarity Factor gets rid of that brain fog. Super important. You stack it with the probiotic or the Goodnight formula, and you get that additional benefit of detoxifying the central nervous system because you're in those cycles of REM sleep. But it's really important to stack Clarity Factor with the probiotic or with Goodnight formula. Myotrol will help with building new muscle. When you get to age 40, male or female, it's harder to build muscle and you start to atrophy, and that's bad, right? So do some resistance training. Take Myotrol that has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build new muscle. Take it every day, drink it with filtered water.
During the pandemic, when people suddenly had the ability, particularly office workers, to work from anywhere, we saw people with means able to flee the city. That allowed some people in New York City who stayed, like essential workers, to get these amazing COVID deals. But as offices started to reopen and the city returned to pre-pandemic norms, these higher income folks came back to New York in a big way. And, that's caused what economists are calling the Great Reshuffle. And it's caused rents to go up really high. And, as wealthier people are coming into the city, the city's working class is having to flee because of the affordability crisis. Those workers earning under $60,000 a year have, left since the post-pandemic period, while those making over 6 figures, that population has continued to grow.
What was the sentiment around gentrification in your reporting? Because I can see the potential benefits it brings, but also it clearly displaces people. So it's really a difficult trade-off.
Yeah, I think a lot of New Yorkers have mixed feelings about it. One of the areas of New York City that we looked into, Long Island City, many of you might be familiar with it, but it's had a dramatic transformation in the last decade. One person that we talked to that's been a resident in Long Island City since 1989 talked about, when she first moved there, it was a community that was, largely industrial, backwater with a lot of artists. And, while they wanted to, have that investment, have more housing and have, more infrastructure in Long Island City, what's being built there instead are these, high-rise luxury housing, and it's driven up the prices, and it's forced, folks in that community that have been there for a long time to, move to further in the outer boroughs of New York City or outside of New York entirely.
I feel like housing, especially in New York, is one of those really sensitive topics that it really hits on a nerve. I personally am a renter. I live in the city and I read every story that you write because it really affects me. Are there any comments that you receive after publishing this story, whether it's positive or negative, or people just resonating with the topic?
I think what's interesting is, part of why we wrote this story is that, there's a broader swath of New Yorkers that are feeling squeezed by rents. Everyone, has felt that, rising rent prices have been a pain point for a while, but I think we're starting to see, across New York, and also it's being reflected in, our politics right now that, rent affordability has become a huge issue. All of the mayoral candidates have, a plan to tackle the housing crisis, that it's something that's on the top of everyone's mind. And I think at this point, everyone knows that there's a need for change, and that there needs to be, this needs to be top of mind and needs to be tackled immediately.
We have a suggested question from one of our listeners. Do your sources suggest that the affordability crisis will be temporary, aka linked to post-pandemic dynamics, or will this be a new normal in NYC's rental market? I'm very curious to know the answer to first from you. Very quickly, with around 30 seconds left.
It's really difficult to say. One of the things that we talked about is interest rates and people not being able to transfer from the rental market to, to ownership are keeping pressure in that market. But if we see, mortgage rates come down, that could relieve some pressure. But at the end of the day, New York City is a city of 8 million residents, and there's just simply not enough housing, and it will take a long time to ease the affordability pressures. We just need to.
All right, thank you so much. That's Paulina Cottrell. She covers New York real estate for Bloomberg. She published a big take story that was really well read because it really touches on a lot of nerves. We're looking at a market that's edging higher. We have the S&P 500 high by 0.4%. The Nasdaq Composite is also up by almost 1%. So for our listeners in the U.S.,
please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin B complex. Vitamin B complex will help with the health of the mitochondria. The first 4 B vitamins helps with the electron transport chain, so it'll help with more ATP. And vitamin B complex will help with cellular metabolism and protect your neurons, so it's dual purpose. Omega-3 helps with cardiovascular health and also helps to prevent the red blood cells from sticking. You should be taking this to help with your cardiovascular health. Take it every day. And resveratrol helps with youthful gene expression. It's also an antioxidant, so it's going to help to soak up free radicals and help with the health of the mitochondria so you have more energy. And resveratrol helps to get rid of the senescent cells, because if they just sit there, they collect garbage and your tissues don't perform as well. So you need to get rid of them. And resveratrol helps with the basal layer for your skin, so your skin will improve. So guess what? Resveratrol is super important, and it's part of an anti-aging protocol. It stacks really well with C60, NAD+, ubiquinol, vitamin B complex, omega-3. So take this stack. Help with your cardiovascular health, help protect your neurons, and have youthful gene expression. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5. You get $5 off any order.
As well as the alleged admission to his father.
Now to Israel, where America's top diplomat gave a U.S. show of support.
Hamas needs to cease to exist as an armed element that can threaten the peace and security of the region, and the people of Gaza deserve a better future, but that better future cannot begin until Hamas is eliminated.
Jerusalem reporter Linda Gradstein.
Speaking after a 3-hour meeting with visiting U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the visit is a clear sign that the U.S. stands with Israel against anti-Semitism and what he called weak governments that are demonizing Israel. He said that President Trump has shown bold leadership and has made the U.S.-Israel relationship stronger than it's ever been.
In Qatar, next stop for Rubio, Arab leaders today condemned Israel, noting the recent military attack on Hamas leaders in Doha. Ford has decided to move out of its iconic 70-year-old Michigan headquarters to a new high-tech complex.
What became known as the Glass House was a high-tech marvel when Henry Ford II opened it in 1956, and American car makers ruled the road. Ford archivist Ted Ryan says times change.
It was a 70-year-old building, and it's hard to keep 70-year-old buildings up to date and with the newest technology. So it was time to move on.
Ford will demolish the Glass House after moving into its new 2.1 million square foot headquarters in November. Jeff Gilbert, CBS News, Detroit.
Wall Street, right now the Dow is down 9 points. This is CBS News.
Go to my store and get the collagen. Collagen is a dual purpose. It'll help with your skin, your nails, your hair, but your musculature, your bones, your joints, your cartilage, super important. It's dual purpose. It has a very complex, typical amino acid profile shown on the screen here. Take it every day. It's a powder. Mix it with soft foods. You can drink it with filtered water or a smoothie or even with milk, but take it every day. Do some resistance training and help with your musculature, your bone density, your skin, your joint health. And also gladiator barley. Gladiator barley will help to build muscle. It's a high-density protein. It'll detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. And when you bring down inflammation, you're helping with your brain function, you're helping with your cardiovascular, you're helping with joint health, recovery time after a workout will improve. You're also helping with your endocrine system and your immune system. So this is pretty powerful stuff. So go to my store, get the Gladiator barley, this is a month's supply, take it every day and do some resistance training.
You gotta know, dry mouth, the nerves. How rattled did you get when you proposed?
The palms were definitely sweating.
Really?
I'm an emotional guy, so there were a few tears here and there, but it's been an exciting ride up to this day, and I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with it.
Chief Star got down on one knee last month. The pop star Natch said yes. Kelsey tells Andrews Taylor's brought excitement and a joy for life that made him a better man, a better person, and much more comfortable with who he is. Deborah Rodriguez, CBS News.
Last Wednesday, Fox News host Brian Kilmeade suggested on air that mentally ill homeless people should be executed. Yesterday, he apologized and called his remarks callous. Steve Kathan, CBS News.
Live from Washington, D.C., this is Balance of Power with Joe Matthew.
Fed Week is here. A possible government shutdown is looming. But Washington is again consumed by TikTok. Yes, welcome to the Monday edition of Balance of Power. As Secretary Scott Bessent announces a framework deal to save TikTok, sell the company to U.S. interests only days before President Trump is set to speak with President Xi. We're going to unpack all of this with Bloomberg's Mike Shepard, and we'll be on shutdown watch with Nathan Bean at Bloomberg Intelligence. You know, he's running the odds. Governor Kathy Hochul endorsing Zoran Mamdani, as does Senator Chris Van Hollen, with some pretty chippy words while he's at it. We're going to get into this with our panelists. Mamdani edges closer to mainstream. G.D. Shanzano and Maura Gillespie from Blue Strategies will be with us. And we start, as always, on Wall Street. Let's get to the trade right now with Charlie Pellet. He's at World Headquarters in New York. Charlie, how we start?
Right now, we're looking at a mixed market. The Dow lower, the S&P, NASDAQ, they are both higher. Joe Matthew back to work. Monday, S&P
another record. Right now up 29, 66.13. All of this ahead of the Fed meeting. The Fed decision on Wednesday. That meeting kicks off tomorrow. Looking at a gain right now of 0.4% on the S&P. The Dow is little change, down 20 points. That is a drop of under 0.1%. While Nasdaq are by 189 record, they're up by about 0.8%. 10-year at 4.02%. The 2-year currently yielding 3.53%. Gold up $37 the ounce, 36.80. That is a gain of just over 1%. While West Texas Intermediate crude at 63.05 a barrel, up 0.6%, and Bitcoin down 1% right now at 114,714 on Bitcoin. Tesla shares getting a big lift today, up now by 5.9%, getting a boost from Elon Musk. The stock higher after an SEC filing showed that the Tesla CEO purchased $1 billion worth of shares in the EV maker last week. Bloomberg's Craig Trudell reports it's a vote of confidence after a first half that saw Tesla's global vehicle deliveries slump by 13%.
Will they have a stronger third quarter with a lot of consumers in the U.S. market accelerating purchases to try and take advantage of those tax credits before they go away? I think that's widely expected. The question will be, what can Musk do to kind of keep this optimism and maintain this, positivity, even in the face of what he's warned may be a few rough quarters in the months ahead.
Bloomberg's Craig Trudell. Indeed, lots of optimism in Tesla shares, again up today by 6%. President Trump says companies should not be forced to deliver earnings reports on a quarterly basis, preferring a 6-month schedule to save businesses time and money. Recapping, S&P up 30, being now of 0.5%. For on-demand news, 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcasts. Back to go to Washington, and once again, your host here is Joe Matthew.
All right, Charlie, good to see you as always. Charlie got through the weekend, so did we. I hope you had a good one. Welcome to the Monday edition of Balance of Power here on Bloomberg Radio. We're on satellite radio channel 121 and always on YouTube. Search Bloomberg Business News Live. If you get Bloomberg Originals, it's another way to watch the radio on TV. So we've got a lot for you over the next 2 hours here. Coming off the weekend with much to unpack, although it's been a really newsy morning. The President of the United States all over Truth Social and kind of moving headlines here before our eyes. A lot of it has to do with China, which you're going to be hearing about quite a bit over the next 2 hours. A potential now framework deal for TikTok. Got a meeting of the minds, it looks like on Friday. Presidents Trump and Xi will get on the line together, knowing, of course, that negotiations are underway here on a greater trade deal that the Treasury Secretary is helping to spearhead. Scott Besson oversees on this very matter. President talking about China over the weekend as he flew back from Bedminster. Let's listen.
We've hit them very hard in so many other ways. I don't know if you know. Do you know what they're paying right now? What are they paying right now? You know what China is paying right now in tariffs? A lot.
All right. Well, fast forward to this morning, and it's a pretty different world. The president on Truth Social, the big trade meeting in Europe between the U.S. and China has gone very well, he writes. What time was this? Right around 8 o'clock, 8:15 this morning. It will be concluding shortly. A deal was also reached, he says, on a certain company that young people in our country very much want to save. They will be very happy. I'll be speaking to President Xi on Friday. He says the relationship remains a very strong one. The company we're talking about here is, of course, TikTok, and Scott Besson did suggest a little bit later on that it was the president's threat of a shutdown that delivered this deal. But again, we're looking at the word framework, which means a deal hasn't in fact been struck, and there was a law passed to manage this TikTok affair. Remember, we talked about it with Shep, up and down, divest or be banned. And he's with us right now. Michael Shepard on a Monday here on Balance of Power in Washington, Bloomberg Senior Editor for Technology and Strategic Industries. Is this a shiny object to be consumed with while we're talking about many more important things, or is there actually a deal in the offing?
That's a great question, Joe, and I think that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of right now. We don't know the terms of this agreement, and I'm glad you highlighted the word framework, because framework suggests there's a deal to reach a deal. And we all know that, especially in negotiations with China, nothing is agreed to until everything is agreed to. And the Chinese side, we did hear from them not too long ago. While they acknowledged the framework, they also made clear that they did not like the idea of politics interfering with their business operations. So we will see what the terms are, and they may not be hammered out, as you said, until that meeting of the minds on Friday between President Donald Trump and Xi Jinping.
Just to bring everybody up to date, we all remember the block the talk and the law that was passed. Do we believe the administration wants to fulfill that law, in fact, meet the requirements of that law for a divestiture? Or do we need Congress to do away with it so the White House can make the deal it needs to?
And this is another great question here, Joe, because the administration has signaled its impatience with certain requirements under the law, like does the new ownership of TikTok have to be completely American? The law specifies that it can be up to 20% owned. U.S. operations can be up to 20% owned still by ByteDance, but then there is a catch. The law really spells out that the algorithm, that is the recommendation software, that's the secret sauce of TikTok, that gets you the videos that you want to see based on your browsing and viewing habits, that's made it so predictable and appealing to its users. That algorithm has to be sold as well and cannot be part of ByteDance's control. So there really can't be an operational connection. There's, obviously the ownership of 20% is still okay. And then there's the algorithm. So all these questions remain up in the air. And then there is the valuation. This is going to be a pricey purchase for whoever wants to get in with the U.S. operations. They've been valued anywhere from 20 billion to 100 billion, depending on who you talk to, and depending on what goes along with it.
This would be the most powerful advertising and media platform in the world if it's handled properly, which is why we are talking about it right now. But boy, the Chinese government has to sign off on this. So presumably Scott Bessent has a sense of what they're okay with here following this meeting.
So they do, and they have been negotiating over this back and forth. The earlier rounds of trade discussions had not included TikTok as part of the conversation, really. They had other issues to get through that included some of the discussions on rare earth elements and some of the U.S. export controls that Beijing had objected to, including on advanced technology, such as semiconductors and semiconductor design software and things like that. And then, of course, the tariffs. We had the eye-watering 145% tariffs that are on pause right now from the U.S. Those kind of took precedence. But now they're down to brass tacks on TikTok. And, of course, when you talk about shiny objects, Joe, TikTok really has been one for the president. He credits the app with helping build his appeal among younger voters. And it was critical in his view to helping extend the MAGA brand to a new generation, and that's one that he sees as critical. And he has just shown some affection for the app itself. He is a showman in many ways. He has his own social media platform, and so he sees the appeal in this, as an offering, as a service, and has said he would rather not see it shut down. He did indicate over the weekend that he might be open to just letting it die if there isn't an agreement. Scott Bessent is giving the president credit for that, in a sense, by saying that the Chinese may have been motivated to agree, but remember, the president has also granted 3 extensions now. Deadline for a deal.
For sure. So we've established the potential value of this company. That means very few people could actually put together a group that would afford this thing.
Well, that's right.
Larry Ellison was already involved. The president's close to him on Stargate, among other issues. Could this be an Ellison deal in the end?
They would be involved in some fashion, Joe, because Oracle already has a business relationship with ByteDance and TikTok. Remember, they hold and handle and process the U.S. data. They serve as the data platform, in essence, on behalf of the app here in the U.S. And there are also other ByteDance-related services that Oracle provides outside the U.S. as well. But they have maintained that they are not a principal purchaser. So it'll be interesting to see who is in this consortium. We've reported that Andreessen Horowitz will have a piece of the action. Blackstone had been in this consortium that we had reported on previously, but in July we reported that they have since dropped out, and perhaps owing to some of the uncertainty that we've just been discussing surrounding how a deal might take shape, how it might work, how it could comport with that 2024 law that Joe Biden signed.
Spending time with Michael Shepard, I have to ask you why you hear about this NVIDIA story coming out of China as well, because these headlines kind of bump into each other.
It is all one story, Joe.
Well, I guess so. In the throes of this negotiation, China has just ruled that NVIDIA violated anti-monopoly laws, going back to its acquisition of Mellanox Technologies in 2020. The stock looks like it's just about to turn positive. Does Wall Street care about this, or are we just gaining our way through this negotiation?
I think they're gaining their way through the negotiation because it's unclear what the impact will be. So China has made this finding, so what will the consequence then be for NVIDIA? That's unclear. Yeah. And of course, NVIDIA and its CEO Jensen Huang certainly have Donald Trump in their court, and he may be pressing their case with Xi Jinping during the Friday call.
Yes.
And remember also that NVIDIA is trying to develop a new generation of AI chips that would work in the Chinese market, not be as fast or powerful as one sold here in the U.S., the hyperscalers that are American flag and based, but one that would be tailored for that market. So we'll see if that comes up in the talks as well.
Pretty remarkable. Investors don't seem too worried about it. NVIDIA is now down only 20 cents, just a fraction of a percent. With the help of Michael Shepard, we'll see our way through this. Shep, thank you as always. Really important stuff about TikTok, and we'll have more on that a little bit later on in the broadcast. Nathan Dean is on.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the silver gel. The silver gel is something that you're going to need for the fall and the winter, but it's a dual purpose. You can use it as a daily skincare. You can put it on a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn and help to heal it. You can use it as an aftershave. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, especially in the fall and the winter, put it on your hands, around your eyes, around your ears, around your nose, around your mouth, lightly coat your nostrils. It stays active for 5.5 hours. Get some of this. Be prepared. Have some at home and at work. You never know when you need it. I also have deodorants that are dual purpose to help detoxify your body, and you use it as a deodorant. It's for males and females. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas, very high quality deodorants, no aluminum, no baking soda, all natural. You can get it in citrus, and you can also get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. Very high quality deodorants for males and females. Again, it will help to detoxify your body. And heirloom barley. Heirloom barley helps to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals. It's a high density protein powder. Take it every day to help to improve the health of your body. By bringing down inflammation, you're helping with neural health, because when you're bringing down inflammation at the cerebral level, you're maintaining the health of those neurons. When you're bringing down inflammation at the vascular level, you're reducing the chances of plaque buildup. When you're bringing down inflammation systemically, you're helping with your endocrine system and your immune system. So it's really important to take the heirloom barley. And again, this helps to detoxify your body. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. I want to play this 5-minute clip by Fareed Zakaria.
Traveling to Ukraine this year has felt different, more tense even than the months after the 2022 full-scale invasion. The new sense of anxiety was palpable before I entered the country. My flight landed in Lublin, Poland, the closest major Polish airport to the Ukrainian border. But I couldn't get off the plane. The airport had been temporarily shut down. Overnight, NATO jets shot down a swarm of Russian drones that had entered Polish airspace, and the country was on high alert. In that atmosphere, a set of unattended bags at Lublin Airport understandably triggered an emergency search. The dominant facts of life in Ukraine are now Russian drone attacks, and therefore ubiquitous air raid warnings. For the first time since the war began, I downloaded an app that notifies me about air alerts. Most attacks come after dark, and locals complain about endless nights of constant interruptions, trips to shelters, and sleeplessness. Many have turned their phones off, banking on Ukraine's air defense system that so far has intercepted most incoming projectiles. But the Russians are getting better, and some of them do get through, as happened last weekend when an Iskander cruise missile hit the main government building in the heart of Kyiv, which houses the offices of many cabinet ministers. Kyiv is still a beautiful and lively city, full of cafes and trendy shops. But all this is now overlaid by a jittery new normal. Some people talk about leaving Kyiv simply to get away from the air raids and sleeplessness. Others have devised their own strategies to cope. But none of this translates into a weakening of resolve. Surrender is not really an option. For most, this is a battle for their survival as a nation. People just seem resigned to a grim, long fight. In a way, the mood inside Ukraine mirrors some of the realities outside.
You know what's amazing with CNN? You know what's amazing with CNN? CNN always says, okay, we have to fight the Russians. We can't allow communism. We can't allow this dictatorial reign of Putin. But they promote these ultra-liberals in the United States. And we end up getting Mamdani as a communist running New York City. It's amazing how this works.
Sense of movement a few months ago. President Trump seemed determined and energized to end the war. He even appeared to have a plan of sorts that might have seemed unjust, but was a practical strategy in its own way. He would force Ukraine to accept terms that seemed likely to get Putin to agree to end the war. American officials, including Trump, made clear that Russia would likely get to keep what it had conquered, that Ukraine would never become a member of NATO, that the U.S. would not send in troops to guarantee Ukraine's sovereignty, and that Trump looked forward to re-engaging with Russia economically after the war was over. In other words, before even getting to the negotiating table, Washington agreed to most Russian demands. It didn't work. Despite those preemptive concessions, despite a personal invitation to Putin to negotiate with Trump, despite a warm red carpet welcome, Putin stood his ground. His demands for Ukraine have always been maximalist. He wants a Ukraine that is territorially dismembered, economically precarious, and militarily weak. This would make it like Belarus and Georgia, other parts of Russia's czarist sphere of influence, totally beholden to Moscow. Any outcome that allows for a sovereign, independent, pro-Western liberal democracy with a functioning market economy would be for Putin a dangerous loss. The peace overtures and concessions seem to have convinced Putin that far from backing down, he can press forward. In the last few weeks, Russian attacks have damaged an American factory in Western Ukraine and the offices of the British Council and the European Union mission headquarters in Kyiv. And it has now violated Polish airspace. Until the incursion into Poland, there had been no Western response other than words of condemnation. Putin seems to be following Lenin's famous probe with bayonet strategy, as recounted by Richard Nixon of all people. Quote, if you encounter
Why isn't CNN push back on Mamdani? Why? They're pushing back on the encroachment of Leninism in Ukraine. I mean, come on. It's almost like a takeover. It's almost like CNN's promoting a takeover. They want us to spend lots of our money and energy in a war in Europe, but not really focus on what's happening on the streets of New York, literally. New York is just months away from having a communist run the city. Months away. Where's CNN stopping that? They're almost applauding it because they want ultra-liberalism to take hold in America.
Proceed. If you encounter steel, withdraw. Finally, after the violation of Polish airspace, NATO fighter jets were activated and shot down the Russian drones. Some here feel that Europe is often slow and feckless, but no one doubts that it wants Ukraine to win this war. The simple question in everyone's mind is, what is the Trump administration's actual goal? Trump speaks of putting pressure on Putin, but then does this in a bizarre, indirect fashion, punishing India for buying Russian oil under an oil cap scheme promoted by Washington, rather than punishing Russia itself.
Again, Mr. President.
He talks about ending the war, but speaks fondly of Putin and the economic deals that America will make with him. Neither he nor anyone in his administration acts like securing a free and independent Ukraine is itself a crucial goal. The administration has never outlined a plan to help Ukraine fight with greater military might, the only real pressure that Russia will feel immediately. And as long as what Putin hears from Washington is mush, he will keep pressing his bayonet forward. Go to CNN.com/free.
So this is not a new issue. Okay? But what the Securities and Exchange Act of 1934 says is that companies have to report quarterly, but it doesn't say what's in the quarterly report. And so there could be a scenario where the SEC, and look, I think it's feasible. I think by 2027, a lot of public companies, if not all of them, will be moving to a semi-annual basis. Because the SEC, and this is the note that we put out this morning to our clients, is we essentially said for the first half of next year, look for the SEC to put out what's known as an advanced notice of proposed rulemaking, potentially going to this idea of 6 months. Scaling down what companies have to report on a quarterly basis, increasing what you have to do on a semi-annual basis. Now, if you follow timelines, finalization is 2027. So again, this is not new. At the end of the day, the SEC is not in the position of telling the White House no. So if this is something that President Trump wants to do, and I think Chairman Atkins, who isn't really, Paul Atkins, the chairman of the SEC, hasn't really talked about this, but he loves capital formation, and I think this is something that he can get behind.
Fascinating. But Congress needs to have a say on this, right?
Well, Congress wants to change the quarterly reporting mandate.
Yeah.
They would have to get involved. But the SEC can say, look, just put in a one-pager every quarter that says, you good? Yeah, you're good. Now I'm simplifying here. But you know, you can scale down what the quarterly report says and increase what the semi-annual report is. And so the SEC does have a lot of flexibility here. And again, this is something that was floated back in 2018. But I will say is that the majority of the comments that came back in 2018 were against this move. Because a lot of investors in the buy-side community out there said, look, we want this transparency. NASDAQ ran a survey at the time, 138 companies. 75% of them, though, from the company perspective, like the idea.
Sure.
So, you know, this is something that I definitely could see happen. And I would just say is that the SEC has plenty of time before the next administration, whether it's Republican or Democrat, to get this done.
This is like telling a congressman you only have to run every 3 years, right? You actually, the idea that you're constantly trying to prove your own worth as a company. As the president says here, China has a 50 to 100 year view on management of a company, whereas we run ours on a quarterly basis. Not good. But we want more information, not less, in our public markets, don't we?
It depends on who you are. Like if you're an investor, or if you're looking to invest, if you're an investor or a market participant, you want as much information as you can get. Sure. I mean, it's one of the reasons why clients call us almost every day saying we want information. But from the company perspective, obviously, you know, you don't get caught up in this idea of guidance and so on.
Want to say anything you don't have to say.
And that's exactly what happened back in 2018. And it's really important to note here is that back in 2018, a lot of the companies came out and said, look, we don't want to get rid of quarterly reports. We want to get rid of guidance. And there was a big letter signed by General Electric, Berkshire Hathaway, all these companies saying, let's get rid of guidance. So there's two issues here. But what President Trump is talking about is specifically those quarterly reports. So that if these public companies didn't have to do it, maybe they take a long-term view. And I should have known is that all my colleagues who sit in London right now, they're dealing with semi-annual reports. So it's something that the markets have already seen before.
What kind of questions or calls are you getting today? Is there outrage among investors? Nathan, is this really going to happen? What are they asking?
They just really want to know what's going to happen here because, you know, it's very rare that you and I will have a conversation based off of a Truth Social Trump post. And then I'll say there's actually something there. And so, you know, there is some there because, you know, President Trump, look, he can just pick up the phone and order the SEC to do it. And yes, I know they're an independent agency, but like I said, the SEC generally doesn't tell the White House no. Right. But he did it through a Truth Social post. And so the SEC, if they're not going to do it right now, and look, I don't think they're working on it right now, but they're going to start working on it. And I think that there is something that's going to come out with this, but we'll have to see what the comments come out back and say in a year or so.
I'll ask you about the shutdown stuff here in a couple of moments, because this is getting to be an interesting time that we're in. 15 days to go. You've been running odds 40% shutdown. The closer we get, though, and the lack of dialogue between leaders has a lot of people wondering if maybe we're getting to be in a situation where it's unavoidable. Could we sleepwalk into a shutdown? Could we have a couple of days? Where's your head right now?
Well, anything can happen, but I'm still at 40%. Because,
you are?
Yeah, exactly. Because I was at 40% a couple weeks ago. I'm at 40% now because the increasing political rhetoric is anticipated. Look, they're not coming to get a deal on today's date. They're not going to get a deal by next week's date. A deal most likely will come on September 29th or right after September 30th. And so this is just all part of the playbook.
Is it a clean CR?
I think it is, because at the end of the day, the party that offers a clean CR is the one that has the high ground. And so if you come back, if the Republicans offer a clean-ish, I'll call it clean-ish CR, the Democrats, I don't think have the ability to come back and say no, especially when they're talking about an extension to mid-November. And, even though there is some thought on the Republican side that you may not have the votes, I think ultimately they would be able to get the votes here, because the Democrats don't really have an endgame strategy with this. And at the end of the day, and this is what I tell my clients, and this is probably the most, from the client perspective, the biggest question of ambiguity here is what happens if we get into a shutdown and the director of the OMB, Russ Vought, opens up his playbook? Is it, just going back to what President Trump said on the news this past weekend? He was telling Republicans they don't need Democrats to move forward here. Right. Now, I don't exactly know what he means by that, because you need 60 votes to advance this. But if President Trump and the OMB have a plan to say, you know what, 95% of the government is essential, and we'll just keep them open and ignore the Democrats, or 95% of the government is not essential, and send them all home and see what we can do in 6 months, I don't exactly envision how the Democrats are going to be able to strategize.
You and I are talking about this. Democrats are certainly talking about this on Capitol Hill, right? They know Stephen, I was going to say Stephen Meyer, Russ Vought is waiting for this to potentially happen. But I'm curious, in our remaining minute and a half, Nathan, are you getting calls about Lisa Cook? Or is everybody in a mode where they know that this week the outcome will be the same no matter what happens with these two?
Well, the calls on Stephen Meyer was whether or not he'd be in place for the vote tomorrow. And the answer is no, he's going to be. What I would just say is that, if you think of that one thing that the market is most fearful of, it's the February reappointment of the FOMC voters, those regional bank presidents that are at the FOMC. The Fed governors have to reaffirm their positions. And if we get into a situation where the Fed leadership looks like that they're not going to reaffirm those regional bank presidents, I think that's when the market and my clients will start to get more scared.
Is that a selling event, though? How do you respond to something like that? Or is that a bond market story, not a stock story?
I think it's a bond market story to start, but, the equities always follow.
Sure. Fascinating, as always. Nathan, thank you. No Fleece Fest this week. It got warm, right, in Washington this week. We're back to the jacket. Thank you. Nathan Dean, Bloomberg Intelligence. Look for the podcast if you're already subscribed to this one. And, well, if you're not, why not? You'll get Nathan's on Monday morning. The call has resumed. We've got a breaker here on the terminal LIRR union asking President Trump for emergency board in labor talks. This is something that the engineers strike potentially could be in place next week. We'll have more on this. New York's Long Island Railroad facing a potential strike and now asking President Trump for assistance. We'll have more on this ahead. In fact, we'll assemble our panel coming up next here on Balance.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost will focus on your heart, your vascular system, brain function, musculature, energy, metabolism, all right? And long-term, it will slow down the aging process. It has a very comprehensive compound profile. Read the label on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take it every day, and it'll help to also control your A1C levels. Mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with milk, but take it every day. It's a great way to slow down the aging process and get healthy. Also, a great stack to help with your bone density and your cardiovascular system is to take vitamin D3 and K2, MK7 molecule. When you do resistance training and you take in calcium, You're going to be able to build denser bone. Also, vitamin D3 and K2 will help to pull out some of that calcium depositing around plaque formation and reduce calcium depositing around plaque formation. So it's going to help your cardiovascular system. In the fall and the winter, taking vitamin D3 is super important. Why? Well, it is a gene expression cofactor. So your cells will express the genes it needs to, and vitamin D3 will get cells to go into apoptosis, especially if they are infected. So it's really important to take and get vitamin D3. Take it every day, but especially in the fall and the winter. And lastly, C60. C60 you can get in extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, or MCT coconut oil. C60 is a very potent antioxidant. It's 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. It's going to soak up free radicals, improve the health of the mitochondria. Your energy levels are going to go up, and the cells and the tissues will perform better. You're going to notice that your immune system is better, your endocrine system is better. By soaking up free radicals at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. By soaking up free radicals at the neuron level, the health of the neuron improves. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take a teaspoon a day, every day, preferably on an empty stomach. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It is cheaper to purchase it at a higher ounce configuration. And take it every day. I've been taking it every day since 2016. This slows down the aging process because it's soaking up the free radicals. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. That's the end of my broadcast. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.